open it. Don't need to see them. It doesn't seem like it's working very well for me. You want sprinkles, pepper?
Well, if you got it there, otherwise I'm.
Well, I do have it here. What do you got? That's going to be very hot. Oh, you can move your salad up a little closer to you. Oh, so hot at dinner time.
It does it and it does, you never ever get it. And Cindy did tell me if you don't use Safari that it shouldn't happen, but I only have Safari on my phone, so.
But there are a lot of people who aren't gonna know, because they always use Safari and just figure they can't get in the meeting. The only reason I knew it was because then Ty was able to get on something else, and I was like, what are you using? And he's going through Chrome, so I had to go through Chrome.
Let's see if I can send you the.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
We don't have enough people, how would you know not to do it when the calendar?
I don't know, it's
doesn't
happened
show
to me
up?
for a long time, but it doesn't happen all the time. So, I don't know. I feel like sometimes maybe it's doing it because I left a browser open with the village
I think
website
it's the
open or
website,
something.
Yeah.
And so it thinks because I've been sitting on the page for days on end that I must be a robot or something. But that's just because I leave hundreds of tabs open at all times, because that's how very organized.
That's how you roll.
Yeah, that's how I roll, I got 300 tabs open at all times in my brain.
Jerry and iPad, if you'll just hang on another couple minutes here.
Sorry.
Okay, can I send it to you on your email?
Yep, I can get it. If you send it to my Laura email, is that the one?
Yeah.
Yep.
The Gmail.
She'll love this. Can you imagine?
The L
teaching
Cavendish?
school like this?
Yeah.
And they're
Okay.
1 year, 7 years old, 7-year-olds on the other end.
25.
Yes, I can.
And 4 at home trying to do it all at the same time.
At the beginning of COVID, I had a 3-year-old.
Oh.
It was outrageous. I mean, it was really hard.
Great when the stuff works, but when it doesn't.
She would cry after every single one because she didn't get to talk enough or whatever. She didn't get to say what she wanted to say, and it did not work well.
Yeah.
I do.
Okay, good evening. Thank you. I thought I was speaking with you, but we were muted. We just had a slight delay as we were waiting for a few more folks to join us. So the time is, according to my phone, 6:04. We'll call the meeting to order. Looking at the table, we have a quorum. All members are here except for Daniel Caudle, who has an excused absence. First order of business on the table, it would be to approve the November 16th meeting minutes. And if I assume everyone's had a chance to take a look at them, and please let me know if you have any changes. Please.
Yeah, it was just one of those words that gets it was loose, but it was supposed to be loose. And I lost the page.
So look for a word of loose.
Loose.
Okay. Loose, I don't know what would be loose. Okay, well, we will make that.
I've got it, it's on page
Okay.
8. The environment is going to loose every time.
We're on the
We're on the page.
I know what you're talking about now,
1,
but
2,
we're.
3, paragraph 4.
Yep, got it.
On the previous page, page 7, under public comments, I missed this meeting, so I was reading
Yep,
everything here.
Very carefully,
And
yeah.
on the fourth line, sentence from the bottom, you make reference to the address, and I wasn't clear which address you were referring to.
Yeah.
So maybe if you have the address.
For the
Yes,
7th
see-
Street property,
Oh,
yep, but I could,
okay.
yep,
What he sees on the map for the address. So clarify the address.
yep, that's a good point.
Good one.
Do
And
that.
then on page 9, not a big deal, you just mentioned that the next regular meeting was tomorrow night, and that's tonight.
Oh, that's probably why Daniel messed it up.
Oh.
That's my fault. Yay, hooray, that's really fun.
Yeah, December
That's
13th, the date.
The date's correct.
The
date
day of the
is
week
wrong.
is wrong, and the reason is because it's from the previous minutes, and I
And you just fill in
yeah.
that. But to cut you some slack, I don't think Daniel
There-
found that on
one-
page 9.
one-
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say that's not.
But
Okay,
I
any other
mean,
change?
One tiny
Again.
thing on page
Yes,
3.
Page 3.
On the bullets, housing on the blah, blah, Commissioner Gale reminded everyone that there are organizations are looking,
That take either one of them out.
Yeah.
there are organizations looking, take out the
Yep,
R.
the second, yeah, that R, yep.
Oh, again, on page 3, the next line below, questions raised by public comments, feedback. Do we need to know, do we need to need? I guess.
Oh, yeah, there you go, do
I
we
think you meant
need,
to say, do we
yeah, do we
know?
need to be contacted?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, yeah,
never
just
request.
minor stuff.
Wow.
All in all, very nice job.
Yes, you really can follow along. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
I'll make that motion to accept the minutes as amended.
I'll second.
Kathy made the motion, Bob seconded the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, minutes have been approved for November 16th. Additions or corrections to the agenda, and I hate to add anything to the agenda, but we are going to. Under new business, item C, we need to elect a secretary tonight, because we need to. And D, if you just write down, a joint meeting with the Township Planning Commission, I'd like to bring that to people's attention. So
I'm
those
sorry,
are-
what's D?
D is a joint meeting with the
Oh.
Township Planning Commission. And I'll talk about that when we get there. Anyone else have any additions or corrections to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll say the agenda is good to go. Correspondence, I have, and you should at least have the first 2 correspondence that I printed off in your packet yesterday. One came in today, so you may or may not have seen it. It is in the 7th Street, it is in the packet tonight. The first one is from Ruth Butler, immediately following our last meeting. Impressed with the amount of work that we're doing, kind of summarized the 4 options as she saw it and her takeaway so far. Her comment was specifically that she liked the way we scored our CIP projects and wondered why we couldn't apply something like that to it. Again, that will come up in conversation later. Mary Cermak, that's all?
Twice, I don't know why.
It is in there twice, but we got it just for once, and that is a recommendation, and actually she just put into print what Greg Noble said at the last meeting, and we all agree with, and we'll talk about that, is change the term do nothing, which has a negative connotation, and you'll hear that referenced when we get to 7th Street on the meeting tonight. And then the last correspondence came earlier today from Ann Harper, and it was kind of a 2-pronged one. It was to bring to our attention a letter that was sent to the Village Council in 2021 by Heather Smith of the Grand Traverse Bay. She's Grand Traverse Baykeeper at the Watershed Center, and she has put that into our.
It in the Dropbox, I don't know if you have a copy of it, though. Do you?
I have a copy, but it just came in today, so that is kind of hard, it is in the Dropbox. And it is, like I said, just making sure that the letter from Heather is submitted, and she highlights one paragraph, and I'll read that for you since you don't have it. And this is from Heather in 2021. Because wetlands are a tremendous community asset, and because development is the largest contributor to wetland loss in our region, we support proactively ensuring their protection through preservation mechanisms, policies, and developmental best practices. If the village has an appetite to explore zoning tools to protect wetlands within the village limits, the Watershed Center is happy to assist, and is bringing that to our attention, and has suggested that the Planning Commission stop considering the option of building the 4 homes. And again, that will be part of our conversation later. That's the correspondence that I have. Has anyone else received any? Okay, hearing nothing else on that, time for public comment. And we'll start with folks here in the room if they choose to, and then we'll go to our online audience.
I would just like to reiterate what I said, and Greg and I talked about this, about the term preserving our natural habitat.
Mary, could you identify yourself?
I'm sorry.
For the audience.
Hi. I'm Mary Cermak Betzel, and I wrote a letter. I live on 10540 North Shore Drive, and Greg mentioned it in the last, just as we got off the air last time, and it stuck with me for several days, and we communicated. And I just think that's a more appropriate term to use. The other is just, the connotation of it is like we don't care.
So noted.
Yeah,
Please.
Greg Nobles from 4th Street. And first, I'd like to commend you on the quality of the minutes, even with the little typos aside. It was very impressive, and I think as someone who's very attentive to the archival record, it was good work. Whoever becomes secretary is facing a challenge.
Very good problem. Go ahead.
Okay, that's not my main point. I realize that the commission is going to be dealing with the evaluation of the 7th Street project, and I just wanted to say a word about the values that come into an evaluation. And of course, should the property be sold, there is a monetary value. Although I think that the financial benefit will be, in the long run, fairly short-lived. The money will come in, it'll go out, but I think in that case, the environmental cost will be significant and ongoing. It will be, in a sense, permanent, forever. And that being the case, I would urge the commission to think about the environmental value of that parcel of land. And again, as Heather Smith pointed out in her comments about that, the significance of the watershed on the north and the northeast side of the parcel. And I think as the commission does its work tonight and frankly in the future, I would try to keep the environmental value of that parcel uppermost on our mind, because I think that is the most significant value to the village in that particular piece of land. So I wish you well in your deliberations and conversations, but I also want to underscore the environmental issues that are facing us, even in that small, comparatively small piece of property. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Campbell, did you want to make a comment?
Yes, I would like to
Taking
make a
people in the room first, and we're going to go to our friends in the audience.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for my tardiness. I was out of town busy reading all the work that you've been doing, and you have quite a methodology established. I want to compliment you.
Again, if you could identify yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry, Campbell McLeod from 201 North High Street. So when I was looking through the data that you have built, you had a wetland delineation map prepared. And as often the case with that, you don't survey that information in other words, the perimeter, the boundary of the wetland. And sometimes people have the ability to scan that in, digitize it so they can transfer it to a layer and put it on a map. What happened here, because of the economics of it, you hand transferred it from the wetland delineation map to other maps. And that's where it started to fall apart, because it is not accurate. So if you go back to the wetlands delineation map and you look at your survey map, what was it? Core, I believe the man's name was. Yeah, John Core. And then you built on that some other maps or figures. So I would suggest, because it's critical thinking that you'd want to go back and understand the exact location if you proceed with development of the property. And the development of the property, I don't know why we're thinking about developing the property myself. There hasn't been a strong statement by the village that there's any financial problems. Obviously, they want to have revenue coming in, but I don't see why you would sell off assets or raise taxes unless it's really needed, and it doesn't appear to be. And there is an environmental value to that property, not just for this current generation, it's for future generations as well. So a lot of times when you do your evaluation, it's not just for all the residents, some of the residents, also so for future residents, our children and grandchildren. So I think that's important to have that there. It does appear that some of the soil that was brought in on that first lot was fill material from an industrial site. That's your chrome and what else showed up there? Lead. And it was chrome and lead, I believe, and zinc. So you'd have to have some restrictions running with the deed, in perpetuity that this, unless somebody cleaned it up, and then, you can't grow things there. There's just some issues. It's not a big deal, but it's not something that we want to sell to homeowners, unless it's completely paid. I assume, although I didn't see, I saw in a later document you had that you do scoring 1 through 5, which is typical, and that's how you do your alternatives when you come up with that and push it against the criteria. You would say this gets a 5 or a 1, and then the winning alternative would come out with the highest number if that's where you graded 5 being best. So that's where once you set up your alternatives, you push them against the criteria, and I think you wanted to change the first 2 rather lengthy. You don't want duplication or whatnot. But the other last thing I'll say is that we are aware that we are in a economic inequality in the world, specifically up here. It's mostly wealthy, white, retired people. And what's good for the village is also good for businesses in the sense if they had some workforce housing. Now, I don't know if that's the right place to put it, but if there are some studies going on, that should be made public where they're thinking about it, because we have no knowledge of that. I heard there might be something going on behind the boatyard up in the woods, some idea up there. But anyway, whatever other alternative approaches to workforce housing, and you do have a chance, building a subdivision or a little bunch of houses. I mean, is that the legacy we want to have? Looking for the future, we should think bigger. This should be something that'll make a statement of who we are, that we're concerned about the environment and the workforce up here. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone on Zoom, if you'd like to unmute yourself and start speaking?
Yeah. Good evening. And once again, high compliments to the recording secretary. That's a difficult job, and it was done well. And I'm Jerry Schatz. My wife, Barb Connolly, and I live at 6th and Mill Street on the southwest corner of the second most dangerous intersection in the area. And I'd like to mention a couple of things that deal with 7th Street. First, to associate myself with the comments of Campbell and Greg. And then to put on my old hat as a professor of law and ethics and point out a couple of things. Very briefly, I promise. The argument that was given for all the pressure for housing here was somebody's sense of fiduciary duty. And so I went back and I looked again, and the definitions are remarkably consistent. And they can help us all because they apply to the staff, they apply to trustees, they apply to members of our commissions and boards. And a fiduciary is one who owes to another, in this case, the village, the duties of good faith, trust, confidence, and candor. and who must exercise a high standard of care in managing another's, the village's, money or property. Fiduciary doesn't mean get the most money in the short term. It's a long-term view of the total benefits, and it's not defined solely in terms of money. It's defined in terms of property as well. And 7th Street is an environmental and village asset. It can't be evaluated solely by short-term financial gains. So thank you for taking a good and conscientious look at this. And when we think of our fiduciary duties, think of the whole of our fiduciary duties. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jerry. Anyone else?
Yes, my name is, I just wanted to briefly introduce myself to the Planning Commission. My name is Zach Hillier. I'm the new Housing Ready Program Director for Leelanau County. I'm with Housing North. Housing North is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to build awareness, influence policy, and expand capacity so communities can create housing solutions to meet their unique needs. We're a resource to communities throughout the county to help address workforce and affordable housing needs, and I'm looking forward to learning more about the Commission's work. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice. Thank you for introducing yourself, Zach. Nice to meet you. Anyone else on Zoom want to make a comment? Nancy.
Yeah, hi. I would just like to,
Excuse me, if you could identify yourself, please.
oh, I'm sorry, Nancy Peterson, 210 North Mill Street.
Thank you.
And I also own a property right near 7th Street there. So anyway, I would just like to reiterate once again that I am opposed to the development of that property. I concur with what many others have said and how they've weighed in about this, particularly that having the undeveloped land and the wetlands is an asset in and of itself. And that's it.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us, Nancy.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay, hearing nothing else, we will continue on with our agenda, starting with old business and kind of standard on number A there is the Planning Commission work. And that is a document that is in your Dropbox each month. And as I've said many times, this is just, it really began when I took over as chair, trying for me to keep things straight on where we've been. But it really is, I think it's a helpful Cliff Note version. If you've not been paying attention, not saying that's the case with those here in the room, but you can go back and see what we've done each month and whatnot on 7th Street and any of the other projects. 7th Street I won't comment on because we'll be talking more about that. Capital improvement projects is completed for the year. Tree committee, as we stated last month, is off until January, so no new action there. Master plan you'll hear about later. That is part of our new business tonight. We're going to kick off a quick discussion about our 2023 plans. Zoning also on our agenda tonight, and so you'll get the update on where we are with that. And the last item on this work document is the short-term rentals, and you will see that on the January agenda. So that takes care of the Planning Commission work document. Any commissioners have any questions about that?
Just one thing, as I noticed looking at it, I think we need to start putting years on things here too, because when I see update full commission work on work done to date, that's not going to happen in May. That already happened. No, I mean here, like.
Right, so this is all, anything in 2022, but I get what you're saying.
Okay.
So I will change it when we go to 2023.
Because we've got we've got January 2023 here.
As for the next meeting.
Right, so.
Gotcha. So are you recommending going back to all of these and adding a year on each of those dates?
No, I just thought it, but I'm just saying, well, Maybe, if I'm looking at this and see review Tree City criteria February, at this point, I might think you're talking about 2023. Even though it says it up
Okay,
here.
gotcha.
Because you've
So-
got 2023s in here on some.
Okay.
I also think it's confusing under capital improvement
Okay,
projects, it's the same problem.
fair game. Okay, what I will do, again, this is just what's in my head, and so it's not surprising, it doesn't make sense to everyone else. I will go back and add years to all of these, and then what I will do is, planning commission work, 2023 will just be a continuation of any project that is not completed. And what I envision in January, and as far as I know, we've not done that before, or certainly since I've been on the planning commission, is have a yearly calendar. So we'll know each month, as close as I've tried to do with some of these projects, put that into place. But thank you, I will do that, Kathy, and clean that up so that there isn't confusion, especially as we start going into next year. Any other questions on that? Okay. Next on the agenda. Okay, so we are at the 7th Street update. And continuing on from our meeting November 16th, but also paired with information that I was able to glean from the village council meeting that happened on Thursday. There's some there's questions about a lot of things, and so for tonight, one of the first things that I want to do, a goal that I have for tonight, is to firm up our terminology. We got some suggestions about the one thing at the last meeting, in terms of how we refer to the plan of do nothing versus what you'll hear tonight is something on a more positive note. Our charge, if you will, and that's just a term that we threw onto this back in February. Again, this was me trying to get my head around what is it that we are charged with doing, and you'll notice that it's in the minutes every month, because Laura does a nice job of that. Anytime we talk about 7th Street, put that charge back up there. And this started back in February, so now, and especially in light of hearing some of the commentary at the village council meeting, I've gone back over and over the same language, and I think we are doing exactly what we said we would do. The charge, to make a recommendation for use of the 7th Street property currently owned by the village. After a thorough review of available information, which we've done, the goal will be to bring forward a potential plan or plans for use that are in keeping with the master plan, environmental regulations, and current zoning ordinances. And that's what we will do. We have decided that there is more than one plan. Feedback from the village council said they want to see no more than 4. There really weren't more than 4 that seemed very viable, so we did narrow it down to 4. The next, and we're going to talk about that charge and see, and I'll get input from folks if we think we need to make any changes to that or make sure we're all on the same page with that. Some of the question comes into play on the word recommendation. And there's a lot of feedback indicating that they wanted to see us make a specific singular recommendation or a ranked recommendation. First, I want to say this committee, the board, has never been adverse to making any recommendations, and will continue to do so. Whether it's a site review, we're going to be doing that with our zoning. We'll do it with maybe some short-term rental recommendations. In this case, this is not that type of situation. My understanding is we're looking at this really from a land use standpoint and the current zoning ordinance that we have, again, saying we would take into account the master plan, and we would also take into account any environmental regulations. We've developed that evaluation tool. We're going to talk about that, refine that a little tonight, and then apply that tool to these 4 projects. And I think on one hand, as I listen to Mr. Harper, it'll satisfy some of that, looking for pros and cons. Where we decided, and this has been conversation that's been coming for months, this group is under the thought, and somebody can correct me if I'm misstating on behalf of our group, is that we've developed, or we have identified the criteria, and that is the criteria, and we'll talk about that further, and you've seen it on this document, taking a look at the master plan, taking a look at the recreation plan, taking a look at monetary impacts, taking a look at all of that. We're going to provide any information we have about that for each project. what we have, what we don't have, what's in favor, what's not in favor. But in terms of assigning a value to that criteria, as we did on the CIP projects, we score the projects, but the criteria was established by someone else. In this case, we think it is the village council who needs to put the weight on the different criteria. For example, not to take into account but
I'm sorry.
that's okay. I see the shaking head. I can take feedback. I was a teacher for a lot of years. We are not elected officials. We are appointed at the pleasure of the president, have been asked to do a task, and what we are doing is in keeping, I think, with what we've been asked to do. I think at this point, and we are not able to, because of ex parte rules and whatnot, have individual conversations with constituents. We've fortunately gotten a lot of feedback. We've seen people, and we understand the importance and the value they place on this if they keep showing up on Tuesday and Wednesday nights on a cold winter's night. So we see that. But I think it is the village council who has the best feel for what the needs are in terms of finances. And I don't think anyone in this group has ever indicated that we're going to place finances over anything else. We will factor that in, pass that information along. And then the village council, who has more information than we do, they will then make a determination based on these things, what fits the values that they've been elected to represent the constituents. And so that's why we we're heading in that direction, and we're reminded, and Bob, if you want to speak of it all on that, of why we shouldn't be scoring and ranking these, but otherwise just providing information. Laura, go ahead, somebody.
I mean, I think that if we're supposed to rank them and score them, I think the council should tell us that. I mean, and I don't know that I don't feel like that happened this meeting, but, I mean, that's what, like, if that is, and I do think that, like, Susan Ager's comments, I felt like we're kind of in the direction that she wanted that, but that isn't what, there was no consensus that said, we want you to rank, we want to see 3 choices and we want them ranked. And to me, the purpose for me of the evaluation tool is it shows pros and cons and things, but then the council can decide which is the strongest pros and the weakest cons. And it's not so much that it's because we're not trying to commit to a specific plan, but I feel like their decision-making in terms of what are the most important things on this sheet, we're just trying to be sure all the data is there. I don't know. To me, I feel like it's not that we couldn't do a ranking, but if that is what the consensus of council wants, then I feel like that needs to be a new directive.
So I think to point out that the scoring tool that we use for the capital improvement plan projects was developed by experts, and they had a formula for determining the weighting of which criteria were most important. We don't have the internal expertise to create such a scoring system for this project, and we found that tool did not work well in trying to look at these projects. So looking at the pros and cons of each of the proposals based against what our own master plan lays out as the important values of the community seemed to be something that we could accomplish. It is going to be somewhat subjective, but we haven't found a perfect instrument for doing a scoring that would have any scientific validity behind it.
I absolutely agree with Jane that we don't have, we don't have the expertise to design that, and it would be end up, when you do the weights, I've done enough, like you said before, enough rubrics where when you find out it's not working for you, it's kind of a fruitless exercise, because then you make it fit what you originally want, or what you want it to be subjectively. So,
I think in our study, oh, I'm sorry.
no,
In our study, and unfortunately, this happened on the bright sunny days in the summer, and we didn't have much of an audience, but 3 months, if I go back and look, we studied the environmental reports and the impacts. And so I think, if anything, this group is better versed in that and understands, to use some of the terminology we've heard here, the value of that. And I think it's very fair what's being suggested to us and then to the village council, that finances and the value of money isn't necessarily the same. Way to come to finance. So I think are a little more, we're better versed in the environment and certainly the process that's taken place. But in terms of the finances, this group isn't as well versed. We heard that from one of our speakers already, that there isn't a need for money in the village. You hear from others who say there is. I think the village council is best suited to take those kind of factors into account.
Somebody else can have a turn first.
Oh, yes, please, John.
What Laura said, it makes sense to me. If they want us to get involved in the scoring of these options, I think we need to go to the village council and get that directive from them. But and then on top of that, I think, we've studied these things probably as much, if not more, than many of the village council people. So we should have, a pretty good understanding of what the pros and cons of these options. So if they want our opinion, if they want us to give a recommendation, I think we should be prepared to do it. If it helps them to identify the best choice.
So my recommendation for tonight, again, I want to firm up terminology, the charge, how we're labeling the 4 projects, identifying, verifying, are we going to apply the criteria to those 4 projects? And then my recommendation moving forward from there is for each of the commissioners to take our evaluation tool, take the 4 projects, take the next month to come up with our own evaluation, come back together at our January meeting, and aggregate all that information and see if we can't collate into one representative report for each of those projects. And then my thought is jumping at that point and sending that off to the village council with the information we have, the pros, the cons, what they've asked for, as much information as we have, and then they can determine. Because one of the other things that was a little off-putting at the village council meeting the other night was I heard one of the commissioners say, well, I thought that first, the mod court option was off the table completely. Well, if that is, when they get this, that would be a time for them to take that off the table. If it's on the table, we're kind of flying a little blind. We've gone to them 2 different times asking for input. And the last input we received, Jane came back, keep it simple, keep it down to 4. Going back to the charge that I worked with Steve since February, was that we would narrow it down, and then we did get down to 4, and that we would make a recommendation of any 1 or more plans that fit with the criteria, and that's what we're going to do. Kathy?
Watching the meeting, I'm still not convinced that we shouldn't hear from them before we do anything, because I didn't hear them. I didn't hear a sense that they knew what they wanted.
I would agree, and it makes me wonder, what are they going to know more by next month? I will say it was a little frustrating to hear words like floundering and things like that.
And resolve this quickly.
And resolve this quickly. In my notes, because I was a little frustrated by that, we have, this is our 11th meeting on the topic. We have, because of our great notes, we have nearly 100 pages of minutes on this. We have hundreds of pages of documents, and I did get the impression that this hasn't been read, and that they aren't, and rightfully so, they've put this over here, but I'm a little leery of that. John, and then Bob.
So to that, would it make sense once we finalize this document to have Jane or Laura share it with them at a meeting and say, this is the document we've created to move the process forward. And here's how we envision the process moving forward, and get a reaction from them.
Okay,
If they're happy with that, then we just continue to move forward.
okay.
Just with an idea.
Yeah, thank you. Bob?
Well, first of all, we have an advisory function to the trustees. They don't have the time to do all the research that we have done. They've got a lot of things going on, so they've thrown this down to us. And I think that what we need to do is give them a list of the values to consider and the options for the development of that property, from nothing to 4 houses to whatever. And the options should be without judgment. And we should trust the council to be able to make that judgment, because they're the ones that actually have decided to decide something about 7th Street, and they're the ones that are going to have to ultimately vote. And I don't think necessarily our judgment is going to be as much as our research for them to make that decision. And I think each option should list the implications of each, that is with the cleanup costs that will have to be done and more environmental study that has to be done for the hazmat. But essentially you're right, we're not elected and we are not initially responsible directly to the people, and that's the council, so I think they should be the ones making all the judgments.
So I'm hearing 2 different thoughts for proceeding, beyond tonight, beyond the few things that I didn't hear disagreement about, making sure we're all clear on the same terminology. I hear John's recommendation would be move forward as we talked about tonight, reviewing and seeing if there are any changes to the evaluation tool, and send that on with our identified 4 projects, just that in and of itself, to the village council for feedback.
With also identifying how we see the process, the steps moving
Yes,
forward
yes.
to get to a resolution, and see if we're in agreement with them.
Gotcha. If I'm hearing you, Bob, are you saying just give them the 4 ideas?
Well, I think we have done at the very least the research portion of any charge they might have given us. I mean, if you're saying we got 100 pages of minutes on this, we've had site visits, we've had we've had all kinds of input short of a public hearing. And a public hearing, that after that is where maybe those judgments will be made, because they don't know what the community feeling is necessarily out there, other than that it's strong.
Mm-hmm.
So I think at the very least what we should do is categorize the options, the implications of each option, the values that we have found that are important to judge this by, and then give it to them and then let them pick it back to us, because we've got that work already done. We can actually produce something to give to them that they can look at, discuss, and say, we want more, we want your impression of, we want your opinions on this. In which case, if they ask us for it, yeah, opinions are, easy enough to, we've got them, already here. But I think, it's hard. I think we need to equally weight all these options initially on the research that we brought back to them.
Yeah, 2 points. There has been a change in the village council, and there will be 1 more trustee appointed. So making sure that the new council is on board, I would tend to support John's suggestion that we say, here are the 4 items. In my mind, this document is the values that we're using. And so as we tweak this tonight, I think we will have those 2 major portions of the discussion with the council, that here are the 4 projects we've identified. These are the criteria we're using to make some recommendations to you. And we would see having, if that's reasonable and meets the council's expectations, we'll do the evaluation of the 4 identified projects and put together a matrix of pros and cons of each to bring back to them.
I think we have enough information here to put something together and
Yeah,
come out of this committee here and then send to them for their consideration, and then their decision as to if they want more or what that is they want.
Right. I think the question is just in what order, but I think I'm
Yeah.
hearing folks say, rather than doing any of the actual work on this, let's send it back to them. So my thought is continue with some of our conversation here, come up with a finalized document here. At the end of this conversation, we're going to have our 4 identified projects properly labeled. We'll send it back to them. They can take a look at the criteria, give us any feedback on the evaluation tool. We'll send them an idea of what the process. One of the things, I know we stated that we would do a public hearing on this, and I'm certainly not opposed. We're not obligated. It's not like a site review or something like this, but I think it's still warranted, or we'll leave that up to the village council. If they would like additional input from the community, I would offer our service, that we would be willing to host that as folks, and I think as John and Bob have said, we do know more about what's in this and would be able to answer public questions. So we would be certainly willing to help with that. But I think I would want to hear from them, is that even valuable to them? So I think, go ahead, Bob.
Just please consider the weather if we have any, because a lot of people are not here to begin with. They're south or someplace warmer.
Oh, on the
And,
hearing?
Yeah, on any hearings that we kind of have all this information given to council or ready to give to council, and then any hearings or that we make sure that this is not in like the middle of blizzard weather.
Well, I think what we do, that goes back to the village council to
Yeah.
direct that, because there was just not real continuity on the council. We were hearing from one, when are we going to get this? Can you have something to us within a month? Well, that isn't the case. And then there was a public hearing, and they even waffled a bit, oh, well, we don't want to have a public hearing. So I think we can keep moving on this and then let the village council decide when and if a public hearing is warranted. We'd be happy to help facilitate that, but let them direct some of the timing, because again, they're the ones making a final decision, and they're the ones going to have to answer to constituents, and they'll want to make sure that their voices are heard. So if we're, I think, all on the same page, I would like to just go forward with those 3 items of reviewing our charge, our label of the projects, and or identifying the projects and labeling them, and then take a look at this. So first, the charge, I've read it to you. It's on page 2 of the minutes, meeting minutes. I know we, over the last month or 2, the word recommendation really came into play, but as I've read it, like I said, over and over, I think, in my mind, this still stands, that our goal is to bring forward a potential plan or plans that are in use, or that for use, that are in keeping with our master plan regulations and current zoning. Does anyone see a need to change that? Would that help any of you understand it better?
One thing I just wondered, if recommendation, if somehow, or if that inherently implies ranking to people, I wonder if we could say to make proposals or something like that of uses, proposal of uses or something.
It does say to recommend one or more proposals.
Yeah.
So,
Should identify options.
yeah.
Is that
To identify possible uses. I don't know.
Let
I
me
just was
ask,
saying that.
just for the sake of time, is this a stumbling block to anyone? Is this preventing the village council? Is this preventing us from moving forward?
Well, I think if you make a recommendation for just one plan, that would definitely sound like we
Kicked it out of all of them.
So that's why I don't know why it says to bring forward a potential plan or plans.
Yeah, so to bring forward potential plans, you're right, just take out the singular. That would probably fix it, right?
Yeah.
I think that, you're right, Kathy. Sweet. So it's not just one plan.
Well, but if you think of when this was written in February, that was a
Correct.
consideration. But
Correct, but
so
now it's.
it still is accurate. Are we bringing forward one or?
Potential plan or plans.
So they said they wanted 3 or 4.
So I guess I'm not. What if we take out the whole first thing, the whole first sentence, the charges, after thorough review of available information, the goal will be to bring forward a potential plan or plans. Get rid of the word recommendation in the first sentence. Does that change it for anyone?
No, because if you're still just bringing one, is that an option? That we would
It
just
was,
bring one
when this
plan?
was done, it was an option.
But it's not been now.
But it's
We're
not
talking about
now.
revising it now, right?
Okay, a revised one then, would be.
I don't think that we're retroactively trying to change it. We're just trying to
Okay, so
update it now.
the new charge will get rid of a potential plan.
So just say to bring forward potential plans for use.
Does that work?
Works for me.
Does the first sentence cause problems for people to make a recommendation?
To make recommendations.
There you go.
Yes.
So that means.
So
before-
add an
before
S and we're good, okay.
Recommendations, does that mean recommendations and plans are one and the same? Is that what we're saying?
Yes, make recommendations, and the recommendations are potential
Are we
plans.
bringing forward recommendations or plans? It sounds like it's plans.
Okay, I would say let's get rid of the first sentence, go with, after a thorough review of available information, the goal will be to
Yes.
bring forward potential plans for use
Yes.
that are.
I guess I like
For
that.
use
I do
of
think-
the 7th Street property currently.
Yeah, I was
owned
gonna
by
say,
the
we need to
village.
put 7th Street
So
property.
that has to
in it
go
somewhere.
after for use.
It could be after a thorough review of available information of the 7th Street property.
Yeah.
No, it works after this one. After a thorough review of available information, the goal will be to bring forward, oh, wait, it's got to have it earlier in the sentence.
Right,
Yeah,
I think
never
Laura-
mind.
So after a thorough review of available information of the 7th Street property currently owned by the village,
Yes.
comma, the goal will be to bring forward potential plans for use that are in keeping with our master plan, environmental regulations, and current zoning ordinances. That work?
We could add 3 or 4 plans if we wanted to be specific, but
Okay.
Let's just leave it potential plans in case it
it changes.
changes.
No
Yeah.
inside John being cute. Okay, so are we good on the charge? The charge, if I've got it right, reads, after a thorough review of available information of the 7th Street property currently owned by the village, the goal will be to bring forward potential plans for use that are in keeping with our, good? Okay, check that off the list. We've got the language on the charge. Let's go, and for me, it's just easier because it's on page 3 of the minutes, and those are the 4 projects or proposals. Let's start there. Project, the right word to use for this?
Proposed uses.
Proposed uses, thank you, okay.
I
So,
also, just
moving
for
forward,
the
yeah.
public, when I was doing these minutes, it was really hard because I very much agree that we shouldn't call it do nothing. But I was trying to record what was in the meeting, not,
Yes, and
so anyway, I just want you to know,
So
very hard.
keep that in mind, right. So
And after you guys made all those comments, the number of times we said that, it was a lot. So anyway.
yeah, no, keep that in mind, that minutes reflect what we were saying, even if within minutes after
I
that,
no
we're
longer
going in
agree
different
with
directions. But I do think and we have, and I hope those of you that are spending all this time with us see that we are listening and we are being receptive and we are learning from you along these lines. And terminology does matter, and so that's why I thought it was important to come back to this tonight. So our proposed uses, we have 4. The first one, who wants to take the stab? Laura, you had some language, preserve.
Well, I mean, I think preserving natural habitat,
Preserving
Existing,
preserving property in its natural state?
yeah, that could work.
Okay, we're not supposed to be looking, but I'm seeing that maybe.
Well, does that, could that be expanded to include more of a passive park, or something, retain,
Yes, you're right, you're right.
or maximize the current natural state, but I don't know exactly how to word it, because I guess you could call it a passive park right now, because people do walk through there.
I think that sounds like, then that's 2 different proposals, though, to leave it in its natural state, but then to maximize somehow means you're going to do something differently. So I think we've got 2 different.
Enhance. Because what I see
But that still
is,
means you're going to do something.
but if we do nothing, which is if we choose to leave it in its natural state or preserve it in its natural state, that would be the recommendation coming, that would be one of the proposed uses coming out of the planning commission, and the village council would, if that's the option they choose, then they would make a decision, what do they want to do from there? If they have a use for it, then I would see, probably that would go over to Parks and Trails to determine.
Okay, we talked about that last
So I
time,
would
yeah.
say our role in this at this point is leaving it in its natural state or preserve its natural state.
I like preserve the natural state.
John?
to me, part of the property that is closest to 7th Street is not in a very desirable natural state. So I asked the question, should we include in this, at least moving as far forward as the village can go to reclaim that front part and make it more, clean it up, or at the very minimum, plant natural or native species there to beautify that part of the property that's closest. Because right now, it doesn't look good.
But
We're all that old
preserving
building.
is-
But again, that gets into a
Lousy.
second kind of project, so are we just saying, the first option is, well, we can change the language of it, is preserve the land as it is, or keep the land as it is, and then the next state would be, if the village council decides that is something they want to do, then they determine how to move forward with a different use.
Okay, but that should be part of it. I think that intent should be in the
In the list for number
in the
one
write-up.
proposal.
We shouldn't make that option or that.
Oh, in the write-up,
Yeah,
of
in the
course.
write-up,
I'm
so
just
that-
working on the title right now,
Okay.
but yeah.
I do wonder though, if we're gonna try and keep it narrowed to 4 options, if we do add to the evaluation tool, there isn't right now, but if we add a thing that, possible variations or, additional, within that category, additional proposed uses that still fit within that, but, which could include leaving it as it is and not beautifying. It could include beautifying. Does it include putting in a trail? I think maybe we could still encapsulate that without it being a separate write-up.
So I hear both of you saying we can add some additional language to the evaluation tool of additional uses, that sort of thing.
But I would still
But
categorize
how
the
would you
entire
categorize
thing
the
as
title?
preserving the property in its natural state, because that's still, to me, all those variations still would be doing that.
Joni?
I don't know if this is helpful or not, but maybe mentioning the conservation district, which I know changes in the master plan, but conservation, you could use that term because it includes public parks, you know what I'm saying? It captures what can be done in that city.
So instead of preserve natural state, establish conservation.
Rezone.
Or it's just
Yeah.
a suggestion, because our zoning refers to conservation as public land, parks, but it's just.
And again, maybe that could be one of the variations, but that's true, maybe we could say, I'm wondering if we could use the word conservation instead of preserving property.
Or you could use C.
What are we gonna
Does it have
develop?
a definition, conservation?
That gets into more action of zoning and whatnot. I like the idea, but okay, Bob and then John.
Very quickly, should we just initially list our 4 options, then go back and then basically subscript each one? We're having
I
a
think that's what we're
discussion
trying to
now.
do. I think right now, I'm trying to cut, that is what I'm trying to come up with a
So we know
title.
basically preserve land is in its natural state.
But
And
that's what we're discussing. I don't think everyone agrees that that's the title.
No.
No, we're just, you're a step ahead. We're just working on,
I'm trying to get the other 3.
yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah,
maybe we go with that title, but have A and B. You have the
So
title,
one proposed use, so 1A is,
leave it as is, don't do a damn.
No, not
thing.
one, just one.
And B would be to try to reclaim the part that's been affected by previous development, something like that.
I still think they all fall just under the one category, and we can add variations to,
it almost seems like the do nothing does kind of summarize it most, but I understand that we're not going to do that. No action.
Yeah, that's a good one.
No action.
But I also think that then doesn't encapsulate all the other
Well,
variations.
what's wrong?
Under that, you would have the enhancements.
The question on the table is what's wrong with the preserve its natural state? Part of it is the front half isn't really in a natural state.
But I think,
I still
okay,
think the
preserve it
idea
as
of the
it is.
concept.
Preserve it
As it is.
preserve
I
the
mean,
land in the state it's currently in.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the basic. It's really basically do nothing, but we want to say it in a better way.
Well, and I don't think there's anything wrong, because, I mean, really, each of these does have some variations and different choices. So I
Right.
don't think it's bad to add that to the evaluation.
Oh,
tool
no,
as
no,
an
I think
extra
that
gradient. But that's what I'm saying, like, I don't think that we need to fret over the fact that the front lot isn't very attractive or any of that. It still
It's
falls
still,
under the same category of we're working to make it a natural site in a whole.
So what about just preserve land in its current state, and then we'll put it as the possibilities of what could happen beyond that. But again, that would be a village council decision of if they choose option one of the proposed use of preserving the land in its current state. If they opt for that, then they may say, okay, what do we do with it now? And then it'll be up to them to say, let's get trails and.
But we offer those as
But we-
considerations,
yes.
those are here's some considerations.
And one of the considerations might be putting part of the land, rezoning into
Yeah.
conservation.
Yeah.
So are we good with just the title of preserve land in its current state?
Yep.
And we will delineate some of those additional possibilities, what that might mean for the council to determine. Okay, the second one is, this is the one that talks about a partial combo use of 7th Street portion for development and the rest under, remains natural or under village ownership. Let me differentiate that from number 3, and I had to call Laura on that because I wasn't quite clear at what the difference, the distinction between the two, and I couldn't even remember where that third one came from. So the first one, using the 7th Street portion for some development, whether that's affordable housing or just selling lots, we've not talked about any distinction there, but using that part for development and the rest, and we've not identified any amounts on this, and I don't know that we want to get into that or not, but that would be the rest remains under village ownership. Where the third option differs is it's also a partial combo using the 7th Street portion for development, and then the other part would be selling off the remaining lots or some combination of use. That came in as somebody's recommendation, in fact, I know who's, what about if the village developed the front, or sold the front two for development, or lots on 7th Street for development, and sold that perhaps for the library, for the township to use for a library or some other use. In our conversation, I did not come away with that as a viable option, but I knew we came away with 4, and so I had to call for that clarification. Are we on the same page that we do see, let me real quick go on to number 4. 4 is a little easier, which is 4 lot division of property, and that is the Maud Court development that was pursued initially. Again, I heard a council member say they thought that was off the table. We were not given that information when we started this project. I was always under the impression that that would be one of the considerations that we would be evaluating.
We were quite clearly told that nothing was off. the
That's
table.
right. So that's 1 and 4. So where I'm trying to parse right now is the differentiation between 2 and 3. Does that make sense to folks? Start with Laura, because you wrote the minutes, then John.
Okay, to me, the reason why I think that we should probably leave it, it's not, again, if we take it off, then we're deciding what is the project that is supposed to move forward. And I'm not saying that it's necessarily the best idea out of the ones on here, and I don't feel that way either, but I also think that what we're trying to do is lay out a combination of suggestions that we've received and then put them in the evaluation tool, and they can decide for themselves and see that it doesn't appear to align as well as some of the other things on this list absolutely do. But that then shows that we looked at it and that was an option, but is not an option that anybody was in favor of, or maybe they will be, but I mean, I don't feel like that's the strongest on this list, which is why you said just that we could maybe even remove it, but I still think it's important to put it there though, so that it can be shown that it was reviewed and looked at, and this is what it shows, and you can clearly see it doesn't align as well, or whatever.
And again, with our new format of sending this off to them with their 4, they may eliminate that right off the bat. Or
Correct,
not.
and then it doesn't.
John and then Bob.
I was just thinking, number 2, I'm happy with as it is now, but I wonder if number 3 couldn't be rolled underneath number 4. Number 4 basically talks about developing the entire parcel. And then number 3 is also talking about developing the entire parcel. So to me, number 3 could become a subset of number 4. Just simplify it.
You could possibly, but I do know, just because I'm the one who wrote the minutes and listened to this many times to try and get it right, that what we meant, or what the discussion was at the time with Daniel, et cetera, was that the village would be developing the one lot, and the ones that were being sold would be someone else. And so,
Developing for a library. Or
yes, correct, or a parking lot, or whatever, those different things.
And we had initially we had two non-residential suggestions. One tonight, the potential township library. The other has been in the past overflow parking for the marina, which people have been using it for anyway. So, one of the options could be mixed non-residential / natural, so that, it could be held for future talks with the township for the library, or overflow parking lot used initially. Then the third one would be residential / natural mix. So that would be a matter of 2 lots, 3 lots, 1 lot, and then the rest natural. The one's a residential mix, one's a non-residential, because I don't think you're going to want to have 2 houses and a library and a parking. That wipes it all out.
I just think the whole library is so far out there from what anyone wants to put any kind of commercial building in there. But go ahead, somebody else, please.
Well, I think that Bob's distinction of one combo for non-residential use and one for residential development does make a clear statement where you'd have conservation, preservation of the sensitive area and development of one or more of the lots closer to 7th Street.
Right, and that's number 2 on the second bullet here.
I don't know if I want to use the term non-residential and residential, but it does distinguish between the two.
Institutional.
Well, I'm not sure what you're referring to then. What is the option then? What is the non-residential? Are we still talking about like a library?
No,
so that-
and boat parking and those.
So now we're talking about, that's a whole different, because that's a whole reverse.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
So we have, the first obviously is preserve the land in its current state. The second that I think I thought we all talked about is developing the 7th Street portion for housing and leaving the rest in a preserved state. But
Can I interrupt a minute? Does that mean the village develops it or selling it?
No, I thought it was either way. That's why it's
okay.
listed the way it was, because the discussion was that either that we partner with Habitat, and that may involve needing to sell it to them or not, or it's a land bank, or it's like, that was the discussion at the time, is that, to me, the real distinction between the two was that the first partial combo, lot 1 may or may not transfer to someone else, and again, lot 1 and the other lots, I'm not meaning that they are the lines that are on that, it's just that the front portion, I'm just referring to it because it's the part on 7th Street. So that part is developed either in partnership, or it does need to be sold to a land bank or whatever for that to happen, but the rest remains in village ownership. And then the second one was that the first lot is that same thing, like it might be in partnership with someone for whatever purpose, with encapsulating library or affordable housing or any of those things. And then the rest of the lots does not remain in ownership of the village because it is also sold. And that was the distinction in.
Okay, now I'm getting it.
Does that, like, so the rest would still be, it might be 3 lots, or it might be that it's sold as one, but in that scenario, realistically, probably the village still doesn't own any of it. And then the final one was that, again, it would all be sold, but none of it is retained or a partnership per se. It's all just private single homes.
All right.
Which I guess 4-lot division of the property doesn't really encapsulate that fully. I probably could have said with single family home development or something like that. I don't.
All right, now I see.
4-lot single family home division of the property.
Yeah.
Do we want to call that? Well, let me ask you, are there 2 different things? Is that the Northport development, which involved the village putting the road in, putting the utilities on?
I think that would have to be a subset.
Yeah, I think that would be a variation.
Developed or undeveloped.
Okay,
I still think it's the same
For
thing. though.
residential
so that still is under
Developed
4,
around
and that,
it.
that would be listed as.
So it should be a 4-lot residential division, something like that,
Yes,
single-family residential. division.
a single family, I think, helps clarify that. And again, none of these mean this is what I think we should do. It's-
Yeah, I think that when we were talking about combinations of preserving some portion and either selling buildable lots, I want to make sure that it's clear in the way we evaluate it that one of those partial combos would allow the village to designate some of the sensitive, environmentally sensitive areas as conservation property, but still develop the lots, because that, I think it's what, 6.8% of the land is wetlands, and the maps may not be accurate, but they are physically marked at the property. So they're, the hand-drawn overlays may not be accurate, but we do have an accurate delineation of where those wetlands exist.
Okay, so I think we have project proposed use 1 and 4 identified.
I'm sorry, can I just add?
Please, yes, yes.
Number 4, I wonder if we should add the word single, detached homes. For number.
Single-family home, I think
Single
means that.
family detached. Well, I don't know. You could have a I don't know.
No, because that's not single-family, it's multifamily,
Okay.
Yeah.
and that's defined, so.
Okay, so 1 and 4
So,
identified.
4 single-family residential development.
4 single-family division of property. Wait,
4
no,
single-family residential.
residential.
Division of-
And I do think 2, I think everyone is clear on what that is. Anyone have concise language to identify it? Do we,
I think we have to say something else in what it means by development there.
so partial combo using 7th Street, so we'll call it partial combo, using 7th Street portion for residential development?
It isn't just that, though.
It's not just that,
I
it's
think
the in part, that's where we're
For
talking
village
about.
development,
Development at the village's discretion.
Yeah, because we're talking, I mean, that's the one, we're talking about the partnerships there, possibly with Habitat or the Land Bank. And so just saying for
But that's
development
all-
is very vague.
But that's all residential.
Oh,
At the,
okay,
at
and
the
then we
village
can spell it out, we're just
discretion.
looking
We
for
can-
titles.
We can identify the
Yeah.
nuances
Yes,
in the write-up.
okay.
But I think the residential is an important word to have it in there. Partial combo use.
but it's not just that, that's what I was saying.
On 7th Street, I thought that one was just for residential. On 7th Street, and the rest in a conservancy or in a preserved state. 3, I thought we always talked about housing on 7th Street, if, for any of these other ones. And then wherever that idea of the library and whatnot came in, was on the other.
Number 3, that was number
I
3.
feel like it could be either, though. I mean, like, I don't think it has to be restricted to one or the other.
Number 3 to me opens it up to all kinds of potential development for the portion that's closest to 7th Street. Number 2 kind of, to me, infers residential for that part. 7th Street.
I think the intent was just the opposite of the way you're interpreting, which
Really?
reinforces the fact that
It's not clear.
we're struggling for the language.
How do you see 2, Jane?
That the village would own all of the property, would designate part of it to be preserved and part of it for development, and whether that's residential or, with a special use permit, some other purpose, like boats, trailer storage. Anything goes with how that piece is developed. And the third one, I was interpreting as probably preserving the sensitive area and let someone else develop the remaining lots.
And to me, the main distinction and the reason why I didn't put it that way is when our discussion last time, which doesn't mean that we have to stick to it, but what the discussion last time was saying is that that first lot development could not be retained by the village, because if we partner, we could have to sell it to a land bank, or we could need to sell it to Habitat or Homestretch.
Yeah.
So then the village wouldn't still own it.
The village, we wouldn't own it indefinitely, but the development would be under the
our
direction of the
direction.
village.
Yeah.
And the third one I saw as
And
us
that's your,
just opening it up for individual developers, but, and I think, when we get into the pros and cons, we can still talk about what deed restrictions we would have to require no clear cutting and those things that we've talked about.
and what if it says, the first one, what if it says something like, I've not thought that, if the village maintains control or oversight, or something like that on the entire lot?
One of the issues with it is in the wording, it says, and the rest remains natural and under village ownership. That implies that the other isn't under village ownership, so that's where.
It was because I was trying to distinguish from the next one, which is more difficult to understand if I didn't put that.
So do you have anyone have new wording for the second proposed use?
How about if we take the partial combo using the 7th Street portion for development by the village
At the discretion of.
at the discretion, and the
Yeah.
rest remains natural, and you don't put under village ownership after there, because
Yeah.
it's.
Then who would own?
It would still be the village,
It's the village, I'm
it just
saying.
makes it confusing.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
The natural area would be retained by the village, but the development along the 7th Street,
Would be at the discretion of the
if-
village.
yeah, so we might at that point decide to partner with Homestretch or Habitat, and there might be a change in ownership.
Although I think you still do have to say that the rest does, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I have for the language, listen and see if this matches what you're thinking. This is for the second proposed use, partial combo using 7th Street portion for development at the discretion of the village, and the rest remains natural. Okay, so that is proposed use number 2, partial combo, and then maybe partial combo is kind of the initial title, and then what does that mean? Using 7th Street portion for development at the discretion of the village, and the rest remains natural. There's mud, got it. 3, no, okay, so that one is clear. 3, to me, I was the most unclear about this one from our conversation, but if I'm hearing people say, this is the question of the village selling off 7th Street portion and remaining lots, other than the wetlands.
Well, I mean, that was really my interpretation. I think the way it's written is that the village would retain the property where the old DPW was, where there's some contamination, that we wouldn't sell that piece of it, and that the remaining lots, the remaining buildable lots could be sold for residential development.
So this is, it's
Is
not,
that the way you?
so this isn't a 4-lot
Correct, that's
development.
exactly
This
it.
is, the village owns, village retains ownership of DPW lot?
So
Would that be?
can we
Yeah, go
use
ahead.
partial combo using the 7th Street portion for the development at the discretion of the village? Because that's still what that one would be, but then the rest of it changes. And I don't know, I apologize, but what I
Maybe the
wrote
rest-
already, I don't have anything better yet. So, but I do think that we could mimic that same language for the first portion, because it is trying to say
So first I'll
that
use-
both of those would be the same, where the lot with issues that is already barren and doesn't have trees, and
I think that makes it a lot more clear, because just saying development.
Okay, so
No, go
I'm
ahead.
just gonna read. Partial combo using 7th Street portion for development at the discretion of the village. And then do we want to continue on, sell off remaining buildable lots?
Mhm. It works for me.
Yeah, and then the rest of the sentence I think can be taken off, don't you?
Yeah, and I think if we specify buildable lots,
I
that
think,
would
yeah,
indicate, or at least infer that the village would retain or add that, rezone that small parcel to the
yeah.
conservation area that's adjacent to it.
I think calling it buildable lots is better phrasing too, because it's the same with the final one. I mean, there were sections that were gonna be deed restricted in that plan, so.
Yeah, and we could put these restrictions on
Or
all
any
of
of it,
them.
yeah.
So far for the proposed use for item number 3, partial combo using the 7th Street portion for development at the discretion of the village and sell off the remaining buildable lots.
Yep, works for me.
And I would just advise that because we're coming up with the titles for these and trying to come up with the proper language does not mean that we are in favor of these necessarily, or that we're putting any weight behind those. Just trying to make sure everyone is on the same page, using the same terminology, so we're at least measuring the same things.
The assumption here is we've got, 4 buildable lots at the moment if you were to do everything. Right now, we've got 4 buildable lots. So we would take part of that first lot, which is the old DPW garage, and basically turn it into non-buildable. And then when you're saying sell off the remaining buildable lots, you would be talking basically about 2 lots for sale, and one's wetland.
Or we could resurvey it.
Survey it.
And have it
What size lots are you talking about now potentially? What were they?
I mean, the whole parcel is 6 point.
Okay.
So everything's
something like
everything is an acre and a half. So there are just some restrictions on how many divisions you can make. Yeah.
Okay, I think we have the language for our 4 proposed uses. I like that. We've got our charge language, and so I think we're all using the same language as we talk about these 4 proposed uses. We'll send that on to the village council. Let's take a look at the evaluation tool. It was initially created by a subcommittee that did a lot of work pulling out the master plan, recreation plan, that sort of thing. We gave some thought to this last go around. We changed some language, so this is a new draft with the changed language. And tonight, and I don't know if you had a chance to try and apply it at all. I know a couple of us did. If you did, and hopefully you at least had a chance to review this, does anyone want to make any new updated recommendations on this document? John?
I just filled it out longhand, printed it, tried to print it. So I noticed that when the copy leaves quite a bit of space at the bottom. Some of these I think could maybe be expanded to take full use of the 3 pages. So I found myself having to cram.
Oh,
text.
yeah, obviously
So
I would adjust them based on how much text we have to fill in the different.
And then my
things.
other question was, are we gonna set this up so you'd have to be able to type in there? Okay.
One thing that I did want to add, if it's okay?
Yes, please, hang on one quick second. Can you set this up, even though we're not going to use it initially, because we're going to send it on to the village council, but you will be able to make this a writable document?
If
for
it's going to be a
any of us?
typable PDF.
Okay,
Yeah,
and so we would each do our own, and then what I said to our members of the audience last go around is that we will compile that information and we will complete one, and that's what we will share. I don't feel that individual folks' reports will go in there. Okay, yes.
Yeah,
Laura,
I can
please.
convert this so that people can type in it directly if they want.
Perfect.
In like
Perfect.
Adobe or whatever, yeah. One of the things I wanted to add that I felt like I in the meeting, I could not remember why we changed it, but we had talked about last meeting, describe the environmental impact, and you and some other people had said, let's put the categories back in, exceeds,
Exceeds regulations.
No, it was, if you go to the next page, what it was originally was it said significant, moderate,
Yes.
minimal, and none, and then it said explain. The reason that in the subcommittee, we decided to remove that, which doesn't mean that we were right, but was that my concern at least is that then we are deciding if it's significant environmental impact or not, and I'm not sure that any of us are necessarily, or that it's minimal, and I feel like that opens us up to something that is our opinion as to whether or not it's minimal or not, whereas if we removed it, and what our thought was is that we're pulling stuff from the environmental reports that are, significant tidbits that we think you may not have garnered yourself unless you read all 50 pages of the environmental reports. We can pull out some of the significant things that are applicable to that proposal and put them there, and that way it's not anybody's opinion, it's just from, other than the person who wrote the report.
Did we not make that change? Isn't it just, it is a blank, describe the.
Because we said we
environmental
weren't sure and you wanted everybody to think about it still.
impact. Oh, okay,
So-
right, I thought.
You
about it.
thought about it? You
Yes, I
said
agree.
you were-
So, I agree.
I
So,
thought about it and I
that-
wouldn't.
that what we
Okay.
can do here is we can just provide data.
Yeah,
and
data,
not
yeah.
opinion, and so,
Yes.
no, I'm sorry, yes, so.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to clarify
Thank you,
because in
yeah.
last meeting, once I did remember that after the meeting, I'm
That-
like, why didn't I say that? Because
Yes,
I remember and I was like, this seems like a recipe for disaster. If somebody like Jerry Schatz, who knows a lot more about the environment than me, disagrees, I'm not gonna feel comfortable about that. So,
we just
anyway.
report facts.
Yeah, anyway.
Any other feedback on this?
When I was filling these out, I guess I wasn't clear on how we're anticipating filling out this part. Is it just
The
put a check
financial,
mark that applies, or, because on some of it, I thought it'd be nice to add the ability to put commentary
Yep.
in the boxes for why we think it's rated as some significant or no impact. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes.
that's exactly how I did it when I got to that. Check mark, just is significant, some impact, and then how and what. For example, as I was looking at the first proposed use, which is preserve land in its current state, under revenue, I thought, okay, what is the revenue? And we could plug in, and it's minimal for sewer hookups or whatever it is. So I would agree with you, John, that this is both a check, kind of a rating, and with comments
Yep.
as well. And then we have unanswered questions, as we get to the bottom of it, and then we will determine, do we, as a group, need to find that out? Does the village council want us to go looking for that? But I think with those changes,
I also think this is where we can, if we're going to put variations, I think we could throw that in. I don't know if it should be at the beginning or if it should be at
maybe
the end.
additional considerations.
I mean,
or
to
just-
me, I feel like that is where it maybe would fit, is at the end, because I think if you read it first, you're going to be going, which one am I reading this about?
What would you call it? Additional considerations, additional use, or?
Variations on the
Variations.
proposed use.
Would the variations be under the subsection under general overview?
Oh, that might work too.
That's what I was thinking, that you should include those under that first.
But then what are you evaluating for then? The sub-use too?
No, see, I think that's a very
That's
good
a good
point.
point.
I think we evaluate on our 4 topics,
Right.
and we're adding some additional information for the village council to consider. If they come back to us and say, we really like that use that you had down there, please provide extra information. But I think, Kathy, that is a good point. So variation.
Well, let me just throw out
Yep,
an
please.
example of what I was thinking. So under the one for develop Mod Court, the one thought that came to my mind was, could we, when we say we sell off the lots to a developer, could we make sure that a developer who builds those 4 houses includes as their part of their design a ADU? They would require them to have an ADU as part of each home. So that's a variation.
Got it.
So-
And I guess I would include the variations at the bottom for anyone who has the variations. Some of those will be come from the whole group, but as you're doing your own, if you see something else, I would list it and then list your commentary next to it. And when we compile all of them, we'll collect all of that information.
Yeah, and I personally think we should include all of them, even if they don't necessarily seem the most viable, just because I feel like with so much public comment, it then can't be asked if we thought of it or not. If we didn't think of it, it's not there, and if somebody did suggest it, then we put it there. That doesn't mean that the council is gonna necessarily pick it, but it's then there as a consideration. And it shows that we didn't miss it.
Right. And then you'll know there is a spot on here for public comment summary about this proposed use. And we've got a lot of data, both in the 7th Street Dropbox from data that we've received when we received the response in November, but also we can go back and we, as a group, can capture that information to make sure that that is there. Anything else on the evaluation? So at this point, going back to the agenda and thoughts. So our plan is we will identify, and it'll be in our minutes, and between Jane and Laura, we can talk. Jane, you're typically our liaison, really, between the village council.
She's still listening, yeah.
Right, so we will get
No, she's-
right, that's what I
Yeah.
said. We'll get the completed copy of this to you, the 4 proposed uses, and if you would take that to the village council.
Now, how,
What about the, I don't know, do we agree we should also tell them where we see the next
Oh, and the
progression of
process.
steps? To see if we're on the same page with them, that they envision the process playing out this way.
Well,
I think it might be helpful for them to hear what we think, how the process should progress
so.
to resolution, and see if we're all in agreement.
So are we, if we go back to what our original thought was, the process then, we're going to take a little sidestep here. We hand this off to the village council. If they like the direction we're heading, or think it's going to be useful, I guess is a better way to word that, and don't have additional feedback on the evaluation tool, then I would see our next step would be, and now we'll have to wait for after their meeting, which will be in January. And so we would probably get that information by our meeting. And so we would take then the month between January and our February meeting and apply the evaluation tool, use our, that would have to be using our March meeting probably to compile everything, get that back to the village council, and they can determine, do they have enough information to move forward? Do they want to hold a public hearing? And again, we'd be happy to help. But I think at that point, our work, we think would be done. I think those are the only 2 steps I see left, completing this as a group, and then a public hearing if they want our assistance.
I was going to mention that there's a special meeting, but getting it to them on December 21st or January 6th, whatever it
Plus you
is.
want to be sure everybody can review it.
I think that that we wouldn't be acting on anything any sooner.
I would think a special meeting.
So rushing to.
Yeah, so we'll plan this for.
And I think they want to keep the special meeting limited.
Yeah, I agree with that. John?
If I understood your comments, Nicole, it sounded to me like you thought that the process would be unfolding over a period of months. I'm just thinking out loud. To me, if I was on the village council and we shared this, they'll better understand how useful this will be if they know how the steps, what the envisioned steps are when we provide this to them, rather than waiting for another meeting to give them the next steps. Give it all.
Yeah.
It can all be changed, but help them understand how we envision the whole thing unfolding when we give them this.
Right. I'm seeing that we'll say, here's the charge that you gave us. Here are the 4 proposals under consideration. Here's the evaluation tool. We plan to complete this if you're satisfied that this will get you the information you need, and bring it back to you for their February meeting at the earliest, probably March.
And then they decide, and do you want us to do the public hearing, or you're going to do, they're going to do public hearing? Yeah.
And that then gets us closer to, if they choose to do the public hearing, a timeframe that maybe they're more comfortable with,
Yes.
getting into the spring. And again, that would be their decision. on that.
But would we also communicate that we envision them weighting these things, or
Well,
somehow someone has
I
to,
think-
I'm assuming they're gonna have to weight things.
Well, I think they're going to have to exercise their judgment based on the pros and cons of each. However they want to approach. It could be a, waiting for, but I think that they're elected to represent, or we are elected to represent, the whole citizenry and need to exercise our best judgment on what most closely aligns with the needs of the entire community.
And we're happy to support if they come back to us and need additional information, because again, as a few of you said, we know this stuff. And that's why I think we would be helpful for a public hearing, but we know this better than they do at this point. Yes, so I think you've got the right idea. John, does that sound right to you, what you're hearing, Jane? Where are you hesitant? Sure.
I just think as long as we're in alignment with them as to how we envision us all getting to a decision made, prevents us from having to redo things.
I would
So
agree.
try to have everyone on the same page as to how we see this whole process going to a final decision.
Well, and some of that will be.
What are the intermediate steps that we all need to be thinking about to get us there?
Right.
So we're not recreating the wheel or having to go back and redo things because of an afterthought down the road. Just my thought.
I would agree, and I think I'm hearing that we are in agreement on what our steps we think they should be. But again, I heard from all of you saying that we want the village council to weigh in sooner rather than later. But we will lay that out for them, what we think that process should look like, or what we were willing to do.
I also feel like if we show them this work, it might make more sense why we can't have a decision in 1 month.
Yeah.
Have stuff ready in 1 month, because that was something that 2 of the council members asked about, and I mean, in the meeting, we're like, oh, no.
Yeah.
But I think that if you see this, you'll understand why this cannot be filled out for all of these in one meeting.
And where that information is coming from, that information is coming from hundreds of pages of documents.
That then they won't have to read.
And the other thing that
Again,
I would like to make clear, and if you just take a look at our agenda, the other things that we have going, this is far more time than I had even hoped to spend on this tonight. I understand its importance, but to me, our biggest priority right now is our zoning, and we've got to get moving on that. And so that is another thing, and like I said, it wasn't a feel-good listening to think that we're floundering and whatnot. I can take that, but to hear that about the people sitting around me, what was hard to take. The hours and hours and thought that you guys have put into this, I know. So I think we are good on old business B, 7th Street update. We've got a plan. Laura, you let us know if any of the language, things like that, we need some help on. I think I've got it written. I think several others do as
We'll
well.
write it out when we finish, yep, so I think I'm good.
Good deal. Okay, anything else on 7th Street? Oh, I do have a question. And I think it was asked, I know you asked it in the village council meeting. Nothing from Pete Picard on the appraisal?
No, I just had the email on the 28th of November from him that he was going to be coming out. That was the week after Thanksgiving, to do his, field work on the site. And I asked him if he needed anything. He said he's all set. And so then he does have a sick brother that he's caretaking for. So, but he said after he's done, then it'll take him a few weeks to get his paperwork done. So.
Okay, and that'll be something that, again, that's just us reporting that data out into here. So thank you. I just wanted to make sure we got that clarified. All right, zoning. Let me get my papers in order to talk about zoning.
That wasn't, I did have those outstanding questions on 7th Street, but do you want to skip?
Oh, yes. No, let's just keep going. We're having fun with 7th Street. Let's just, no, I did have that on there, didn't I?
Yeah,
I know.
you do.
Outstanding question, and one of them, I believe, Joni has an answer.
Okay.
So go ahead, Laura, please.
So the outstanding questions that I have was on the DPW split, which I've talked about before, and being sure that that's officially filed with the township assessor so that the county can update it on their map. And then the other thing, which I did, when you look at one of the surveys that's in the Dropbox from John Core, it does go through the details of the previous deeds that he has cited for the changes. But I had noticed, for those that don't know, that his property line is different than the county's, not just in the DPW area, but also in the upper areas, with the lots that are adjoining the other properties. And it looks to me like, initially my question was, what title search did he do? But then not all of the surveys have all of the pages, but the one that does have all, just because some of them are just some of the first pages, but the one that has all the pages clearly shows that he did do that. But I'm not sure, and just would like some clarification, I guess, with the township assessor on if they need additional things to change the map, and what, if anything, this does. I mean, if his survey is correct, and that should be then that should be updated at the county. And if that's correct, then people who right now, as far as their map is concerned, own land that they don't own, that is surrounding it. And so to me, I feel like if we could get that clarified, like what needs to happen, or how can that be corrected so that the survey that was paid for, that did research, is what the county acknowledges is the accurate boundaries.
So Joni asked a question of John Core, and his response is that the survey does represent the actual property as surveyed from historical deeds. If there are no other deeds that are not accounted for, then the survey represents what is on the ground. Tax descriptions are not to be relied upon and often contain errors. That being said, the survey should hold and the tax descriptions and maps modified.
I still feel, because it's for the village though, that we should be sure the county is willing to change it,
Yeah, and that process is, as you stated, through the assessor. So since I communicate, and this is coming to the end of her time frame to update the assessing data, I said to Nicole, then I will communicate with her that that's what needs to be updated.
Okay. Yeah, because that's just what I want to be sure that she's going to reflect these changes. And
she is the only one who can.
Correct. And then it goes to equalization, and then they'll do it. But she has to be satisfied that it's an accurate pulling of all the prior deeds, and that our survey is more accurate than the ones that are on record that she's been using for what's here, is my understanding from her. Okay. And that's why, to me, I feel like the answers should come from her, probably, but like through you, if you're able to find it out. Because I do question, I mean, like when you overlay them, there is a really big difference. And I did read and do understand, now that I've looked at this copy, which I hadn't seen, I mean, it was in the Dropbox the whole time, but because there are other surveys, I hadn't read every page of this specific copy. He clearly did find all of these historical deeds, and he even talks about how there are discrepancies and there's stuff that was wrong. He does outline that right on these pages. Just for my own, I guess, understanding is I just want to understand, because some of this, I mean, the parcel adjoining it, it makes that parcel almost, there's nothing left that person owns. And are there ramifications to the assessor adjusting it to reflect that? And what are those ramifications? Because to me, if they are accurate, great, but I mean, the lawsuit in Leland about the road ends is about this exactly. So I just kind of want to understand what those ramifications are, because by us going through this process and looking at all these things for this amount of time and deciding all these things, I think it's really, it doesn't serve us well if we say, yes, this is right, and then we don't understand what else could follow if the assessor does adjust it as necessary. If that makes sense?
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I just,
I don't know who gives us that answer. That's my concern, is that like what ramifications could occur if the assessor sees this and realizes, wow, all these deeds have been, we've recorded some wrong boundaries here on our tax rosters, and
Isn't
how does
what
that
John is
affect
saying,
the other
that-
properties?
Isn't that, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Isn't that what John is saying, though, that those tax descriptions aren't
Which is
the most
represented on
accurate,
that map.
and that's what's represented, and those aren't the most accurate. It's the land descriptions and it is the survey itself.
I do, but these other people could have surveys that reflect what's on these. Something had to give them this boundary in the first place.
Okay, so for a remedy, so for the sake of time, Joni, is this something you're comfortable following up on, and the two of you?
I will get the information, I will get actually the deed and send it to her with the new legal descriptions. And if there are any questions that she has, then we'll take it from there. I'm not a surveyor.
Yeah, right.
I'm not.
Which
the
neither am
assessor.
I, which is why, I don't
Yeah.
know the answer, but I
Years
just
and
want
years
to.
of college.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just,
Yeah.
that is my unanswered question.
Okay, and I think we've got a plan for
Yes.
remedying it.
And I will get that to her this week.
She's not there this week, but good luck.
It'll be in her email.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, zoning update. So, and I don't know what we're going to be able to really completely accomplish tonight. We, for those of you listening, we have been working on our zoning since early 2022. We have employed Arthur Mullen as a consultant on this, has been a great help as we move forward. We have been hoping for this actually for a while now. We just received our updated complete draft of all of our articles yesterday morning. The goal for today was to take a look at Articles 2 and 3, which are the definitions and general provisions, to see if we felt solid enough about what he sent back to us, with the idea that we would send it, those Articles 2 and 3, onto the village council. Not necessarily for approval, they're going to approve the entire zoning ordinance at once, but they have asked for us to send them information in smaller chunks, as opposed to sending all 26 articles, 133 pages. I don't know, as I reviewed it between yesterday and today, that we are going to be close enough. There are some things, I don't know if you had a chance to really look at it, Joni. We came up with a document, I don't have a date on this one, back, no, this one, I'm sorry, this document, a few months ago, after we had met with him, he sent us back our first go of changes. We found other things that weren't, and so what I did today is went through page by page, just through those first two articles, and found several things that had a nice check mark. Yep, he changed it, and then I have several that are no, and a lot of question marks. So do we want to, so we have a couple of thoughts. One would be to start going through those page by page and look at 2 and 3. And the merit for doing that would be if we thought we could get through those and move those onto the village council. If we don't think that's the case, I think my recommendation would be, have talked about holding an additional special meeting in January just for zoning and take it up at that point. I think, to me, there were just enough inconsistencies and things that weren't addressed by Arthur in this latest rendition. A couple things that are missing. Laura, you found some things. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so to me, I feel like that could make sense because we don't have to just do 2 and 3. If it's a special meeting, could we just do as many as we can fit in the time span we've got, which would be good, and then maybe we turn over as many as we've got for them to do, because it doesn't bother me if somebody reads 2 and 3 one week and 4 and 5 the next week.
Exactly.
They can do their own schedule. Also, another reason for me is that this was, he did give us all of this, which is great, but I only looked at 2 and 3 right now because that was the time I had, as well as I didn't do the best job I possibly could have because I only had, for me, my schedule, I only had today to look at it, which is not my favorite thing given what it is that we're reviewing. And then 3, what I noticed is anything that we left as like, the notes were hold for Arthur Mullen, get Arthur Mullen's opinion. Those are all the things that we had opinions, but we verbalized those, and I feel like maybe those weren't captured for him. I know, I don't, but that's what I feel like. When you look through every single thing that I was like, wow, that's That's not
That's
at all
right,
what
did
I
not
thought we
change,
said.
did not change, don't see
In
it.
fact, you've made it worse. Yeah, sorry. But there's one in particular that I'm just like, really? That's like the opposite of what I was saying. So, but anyway,
Oh, disconnect.
I feel
Yeah.
like every time that was how I felt when I was reading it, was things that were read that were like, hold for him. What's his opinion? And that's great that this might be his opinion, but I feel like he didn't necessarily integrate his opinion with what we said.
Yeah,
I would agree.
I don't know.
oh, I agree.
Yeah.
Any other comments on, well, this, or
I think your plan.
the plan
I think a
of
special
moving
meeting-
forward, that
My
we,
notes are.
I agree, we should defer it to a special meeting because there's a lot to do.
I would agree.
I also feel like then we have more time to review more, because I do think that if we had a special meeting, we would be able to do more than 2 and 3.
I would agree.
And if we could get some more of it done, especially if he's now, I mean, he's definitely gonna have to revise this again, in my opinion.
Mhm.
So I think, and then this next time, I feel like we should be as clear as physically possible. Like, this is the language. Do you see anything wrong with it?
Yeah.
If
And
so,
and
then
that's
change
illegal.
it. But
Yeah.
if not,
And-
just insert this new language.
Right, and he gave us a little other feedback, because Joni was asking him, my prompting, can you please nudge him, we want this stuff. And he also explained some other things about the process that we can talk about at the next
Oh,
meeting.
yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
did give you all that email. I'm just wondering if it's worthy, if you have time between now, like Laura and I can get together with Arthur on the phone and maybe capture some, like, hey, we noticed that, just in these first few chapters and direct, like, he has all the documents. I know that, he was under some time restraints, but nevertheless,
We all-
be like, hey, yeah, we all are, absolutely. And just maybe just have that quick phone call that,
I like that idea.
was there something that you were missing? Because I've been trying, my communications are, we have all this information, we did the spreadsheet, we have the minutes, we have,
Well, and
Yeah.
I do think the ones that are open-ended here, that I feel like is where we missed the mark, is I have a lot of notes on those. I think everybody else does too. I could fill in a lot more. It was just so much that it was not, but we definitely could.
so that
If
was from the workshop meeting that we had. And
Yeah.
those minutes reflected the answers for
Yeah.
these.
And then
Yeah.
remember, the three of us sat down and developed this, and then we cross-reference it. Would the two of you be willing to sit down
Yeah.
and take a look at this document, that document, and get us more information? And then I think I have it, do I have it on my?
I think, are we going to try to have that back from him by the time the special meeting happens though? Because I feel like we cannot count on that. Like additional answers, like we can get together.
Maybe we can pull it together in this spreadsheet though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then we can show everybody by the social, I just know that,
I would
I
agree.
mean, Christmas, and if we're gonna have a special meeting in January, that's zero
Yeah.
time for him to.
But we could at least make sure we're all on the same page
Yes.
and move through the rest of it, so.
Yeah.
And I have
Yeah.
that's coming up in new business, we will talk about extra meeting in January, and I'm hoping people can do that. I would agree then that we call that our, we have a time on.
That's what I was just gonna say, what time
We've
is
got
it?
8 minutes to hold that.
Since that is covered up now, we need to move.
Okay, so the zoning update on,
Oh, you can, oh, yeah.
oh,
Yep.
there it is.
I was
yeah.
just looking at the big one, and it continues to be right, the computer works.
So the zoning update on revisions, item C, we are going to hold that for a special meeting in January. And we will start working on 2, 3, and then move as far as we can. We'll schedule, we'll talk about that when we get to that under new business, scheduling the meeting. That does take care of old business. We are up to new business. And I'm going to say, let's just real quick, if we can, I'll entertain a motion to extend the meeting to complete our agenda.
I move that we extend our meeting to finish our agenda.
Moved by Bob, second by John, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, that's a nice lot.
So wait. Moved by
Bob, thank you, seconded by
seconded
John Wooler.
John. So, because I heard you say Bob twice, and I'm like, Pam, Bob?
Yeah, no,
Anyway,
I'm-
sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, and so we will complete the agenda, and I think we can do it in a timely fashion-ish. Master plan, again, this committee continues to successfully chew gum and walk at the same time and all that stuff. Master plan, 2023 is the time that the planning commission needs to review our master plan. We've asked Jane to kind of take the lead, help us on framing that for us, and I'm going to turn it over to Jane.
Okay,
Thank you.
and sure. There's well, one page, but it goes on to the second side, summary of the process that is included in the Michigan State University Extension's Citizen Planner course. Back in, when the Zoning Enabling Act was passed in Michigan in 2006, MSU and Michigan chapter of the American Planning Association created a whole series of educational materials called the Land Use Series, and it was to prepare planning commissioners, since there hadn't been such a thing prior, to comply with all the provisions of the Planning Enabling Act. And in 2018, the materials that applied to the 5-year plan review were updated. And that's because it's based on peer-reviewed research, and it's also specific to Michigan law and statute. I recommend that we adopt this review instrument to help us walk through the master plan. And so we're obligated, now that the plan has been in existence for 5 years, to conduct a review and determine if the plan doesn't need to be changed, needs to be updated with amendments, or needs to be completely redone. And there are a series of 12 questions that should be addressed sequentially, in order. And each, the best practice is to address or complete each step before moving to the next. I think that we, for educational purposes, for educating ourselves, it might be helpful to just go through all 12 of the questions, take a look at the master plan, and begin to prepare ourselves for taking a deep dive on each of the areas. I took an opportunity to go through and put some notes that may be helpful or confusing, depending on how well I wrote them, but directing you to specific portions of the master plan that address each of the areas. And then this is a high-level synopsis. The complete 5-year plan review from MSU Extension is 4 pages, but it is in Dropbox, and that's what will guide us as we move through over the upcoming year. Beginning after the first of the year, we'll decide whether in March is the appropriate time to begin, depending on where we stand with the adoption of the zoning amendments, the short-term rental question, which was not addressed in lame duck. So we have an opportunity to get something in place. And obviously we're still spending a lot of time looking at the 7th Street recommendation.
So at this point, are you recommending, so again, as Jane said, here's the document, it's in your Dropbox, and the 12-step questions, the checklist is involved. And so,
Yeah,
Jane.
between now and our February.
So I think February, we should reconvene, see where we're at.
Yeah, see where people, if you're feeling that you can come down on the side of, I don't think anyone's going to say it doesn't need to be changed at all. But in review, how much change will be needed and whether or not we're going to need to contract for additional consulting services, or whether we can accomplish the amendments internally.
Okay, so we'll reconvene on the topic in February, see where we're at on that. So the goal will be for each of us to take a look at what Jane has provided for us, match it up against a checklist. And what I love is how you took the work out of it and put the page numbers of the master plan and really laid a nice foundation for us, isn't it?
Yes.
And I think too, any of us who have participated at all in the township master planning process should feel free to take advantage of the work that they've done in updating some demographics and being able to incorporate some of we are township residents too, and contribute to their master plan, even though we don't vote on the zoning ordinances.
Laura, please.
I just have a question. So when we first looked at zoning stuff, we had them do an audit first, right? And they gave us a list of things that they suggested we change.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible if, and this doesn't give an answer right now, but if we work on revisions ourselves in February or whatever it is, and we come up with, whenever that gets done, is it possible instead of hiring them to write it for us, we hire them to audit our revisions and then go from there instead of having to hire them to do all the actual writing?
Creative solution.
I just wonder, because I feel like, same with the zoning, I think the zoning money is well spent. I mean, there's lots here. I was frustrated, but it's not, they aren't doing a bad job. But I do think that if we can rewrite it first and then send it to them and say, is there anything you see that is glaringly bad to leave this way? And then it's just an audit fee instead of a please write everything fee.
I think that's a great idea. Okay. The current master plan was done by a consulting firm. And so we're working with one firm's boilerplate, the township is working with another firm's boilerplate.
Well, and the people who truly understand our village is us. I mean, anybody that lives here.
Yeah, it makes sense for us to do the first right of it.
The challenge with a consultant anyway is to get them to understand our perspective because they don't live here.
I would agree.
I think that's a very creative solution.
Okay.
Suggestion. We'll see if it's a solution.
Yeah, I just don't know. And I just know too, the audit was very cheap in comparison to having them actually do the work. So.
And we talked a little bit in bed, and especially we're at the chair of the finance committee next to me, anything we can do to save funds.
Yeah.
And I do think we are capable of probably doing the first right on this. And,
I think so too.
So, all right, if everyone take a look at that and, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, no, this February, put this on your agenda for February, and we'll talk about that. Next item under new business, we talked about a little, are people able to take out calendars and see if we can pick a date on zoning? Would that be, and this would be an extra meeting in January for the purpose of zoning. I am fine if we move this to a daytime. We've done those in the past for our special meetings. If that works better for folks. John?
I'm just wondering if we should pick 2 dates. I mean, assuming we won't need the second date. Hopefully we'll get through everything on the first one.
Oh, you want to just crank this right up, go all 26 in
Well,
January.
no,
All right.
I'm just saying, if we decide we don't need the second date, we can dismiss it, but it's good to get it on the calendar.
All right. Well, let's start with one. Anyone have?
So the regular meeting will be on the 18th.
The regular
Establish
meeting
that
is-
first, just
yes.
sure. Okay.
That is on the 18th. And we're talking about a day meeting because otherwise I was going to say, let's make sure we are not planning it up against the township. We made that error today. I apologize, take responsibility. We will try not to do that in the future. So a day meeting, those of you that have real specific commitments, days of the week that work best, Laura, Kathy?
I don't know that. I can work around it.
If it's scheduled, you can work around it, right? For me, mornings, I mean, it needs to be before noon, ideally.
Okay, are you available the week before the planning commission meeting?
Which date?
No, the week of the 9th. Do you have something, anything available the week of the 9th? Because I know things
I
get
will
dicey for you.
have, unless we change, I'll have finance committee meeting on the 11th at 10 o'clock.
Laura, day of week that works best for you?
And January 9th would be bad for the two of us.
Right. The dark sky.
From 9 until 10:30.
So we're looking at 10 or 12 are the best. We're working Friday, the 10th or the 12th.
For me, the morning on either of those works.
Schedule a 9 to 12.
Oh, actually, you know what? I'm sorry.
That's okay.
The 10th does not work in the morning for me.
That's okay.
Sorry.
January 12th. January 12th.
So that's Thursday, January.
That's Thursday, the 12th.
And what time are we gonna try to start? 9?
I'd say
We
9.
don't typically have anything on Thursdays,
Oh,
always
that
Tuesdays
morning.
and Wednesdays.
Yeah.
Or is
so
that
that would be,
LTUA or that's later?
that's on Tuesday, the 17th.
So we're looking at January 12th, so 1/12.
That's a Thursday?
That's a Thursday,
Thursday.
9. Do we dare say 12 to 12, or is
I
that
think we
just too
should,
much?
let's just say that.
9 to 12, and
Because
not
then
a
people have it on
second
their
pass.
schedule and then.
Okay. Do we want to try
And the
and
last
shoot?
time we said that it was like 12:30, so I think
Mm-hmm.
let's just go with 12 and.
Yeah, 12 and get out of here. Do we
Yeah.
want to shoot for one, say, the 3rd week of January? Put a
Yeah.
second meeting in?
So that whoever is doing the minutes has time.
Yeah. Well, we've got, oh, that's. Geez.
Okay, that week, the 3rd, so if we're looking at the week of the 23rd,
Yeah.
that week, the 26th is not the day, is the day I can't do it. So that's the Thursday that time.
Or Jane, I don't know
But
what
every
your
other day.
status is going to be. Should we try to go even into the next week? Does that do any better for you? Or do you get into village council on the 2nd?
Yeah, and
No.
I don't really know, so I have a surgical procedure scheduled on the 19th. And I don't know how quickly I'll be back
Yeah.
in action.
Makes sense.
I can, beginning the following week, I could join by Zoom and could, for a work session, I can participate, I just couldn't vote on anything.
Well, we don't really vote a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, until we get to the end of something.
Extend the meeting, that's what we
Yeah.
want the most.
Yeah, exactly. And adjourn. What about the 25th? Although that gets into maybe, is
Thursday.
that finance? I see.
Oh, yeah, no, because that's at the beginning.
25th?
What day is that?
That's a Wednesday?
Wednesday.
Wednesday, the 25th? Wednesday, the 25th. All right, let's put that down for another 9 to 12 if needed, and oh my gosh, okay. And those will both be special meetings for zoning. And I will convey that to Danielle. And I know sometimes those morning meetings are tough.
I think he has told me he just can't do morning meetings, but we can still chat, these are far ahead of time. so-
Right.
Or further than sometimes.
Yeah. Okay, so that is item number B under new business. C, now it gets a little tricky. We need to elect a secretary. And the reason for that is Laura was our secretary through last month. She is now on the village council. And
Ex officio
members cannot
chair meetings. And because of the way we established our bylaws, we don't have a vice president. The secretary acts in the absence of the president. And so we need someone else.
Yeah, I do think I will, whatever people feel is appropriate, but when you do read the bylaws, it does also say that we just have those two positions, but that any additional could be created as needed, and I didn't know if it's simpler or easier to say that we create a vice president. I didn't know if that would be simpler.
We would have to amend the bylaws.
It doesn't say that. It says that we can, as necessary, the planning commission shall elect a chairperson and a secretary from its members and may create and fill other offices as it considers advisable. That's what it says. And it says an ex officio member of the planning commission is not eligible to serve as chairperson. So I think that it could be, but again, that's page 2.
Okay, and that's from our bylaws, not from the, yeah.
This is not the enabling, act, this is
Yeah.
Yeah,
our
this is from
personal
the
bylaws.
Village of Northport Planning Commission Ordinance number 99. And if people don't want to do that, I'm totally comfortable with that also. I just wanted to let you know that if that's simplest because no one else wants to be secretary, that I think is an option to us without revising it, because I think depending.
Got questions over here, John?
I'm just curious, previously we had a
Recording secretary.
recording secretary
We have
from the
been,
staff here. What's the status with that replacement?
I've been asking for a few months on that and have been told we have to wait now until April. There's going to be a transition in position of our liaison position. When the new liaison is hired, it will revert back to that will be a part of that job description. It is not now. And it does put us in a bind for these next few months. Laura has been doing our minutes for us, and obviously everyone is in favor of that.
Sorry. What she has, I don't know where this is on the website, because I looked and I don't, okay.
I think it's on our planning commission page. We have bylaws and we have an ordinance. The ordinance creates
So I was
the
reading
planning
the
commission.
ordinance, and if you
and we
read the
have-
bylaws, it does clearly have vice chairperson as one of the choices, and the secretary is separate.
Which one did that's not.
Yeah, I don't have a copy of that, and it's not in my binder, which is why I didn't.
That is what I'm looking at, but what number has the?
Says the first, this is different than the ordinance. It is definitely different. It's laid out differently. It's section 1 here. I'll pass it.
Sure, that's not uncommon. You have an ordinance and your bylaws. And they
Oh
were
my gosh, that's even
updated.
different than mine. Mine is
Yes, it
18.
is.
What year are those?
2000, this is
2009.
2009.
Okay, so
Oh, that's,
Oh,
oh, you have bylaws from 18?
18, and there is
Yeah.
no vice president.
But our ordinance clearly
Vice
says that
chair.
we can
Or vice
just
chair.
create, I mean, this
And
is,
can an ex officio member be a vice chair?
no, you would not be
No.
able to. That would be the thing, is that you couldn't be, but that would be taking away the one responsibility that is not eligible as
Yeah.
secretary.
So we could nominate a vice chair to act in the absence of the chair. And Laura could continue to serve as secretary until in April, there will be new appointments to the planning commission made.
So
we're
she
only
would
looking
stay secretary, we would appoint,
A vice chair.
The vice chair.
and who would,
And then you could ask them to do the packets,
and the vice chair, though, has to be somebody who would be willing to run the meeting,
if you were gone.
if I were gone.
Yes, correct.
And so that would have to be somebody else in this
Yes,
room.
not me or Jane, because
Right.
Jane couldn't be that either.
Or Daniel.
Correct, but you
Or,
can.
yeah, Daniel, let's vote for Daniel.
He can't, he's ex officio.
Oh, yes, that's true, sorry, yes, yes.
So you can remain as secretary, and could you technically continue to take our minutes until
Right,
April?
I would do that until we get recording secretary, which I think is, there's a plan in action.
Okay, so we all.
John or Bob
have to be vice chair. John or Bob would have to be vice chair.
Yeah, it feels like it would have to be someone
Yeah.
And
else.
the vice chair would be the person that would run a meeting if I weren't here. We've got a no and a no.
I support, oh, Bob said no?
John
Oh.
said he'll do it.
John said,
Okay, I was gonna say, I support Bob or John.
My challenge would be, I'm gonna be connecting remotely in February, March.
So
So don't miss
don't
those
miss
meetings.
February and March is what I'm hearing. I'll do my best.
Or it's gonna default to Bob and Kathy, just because out of necessity.
Okay, so, we have a secretary, we don't need to elect a secretary. Do I have a motion to create a vice chair and nominate John Woomer?
Yes, I would move that we nominate.
Wait, I'm gonna be remote.
If she doesn't miss the meeting, you never have to do it.
That we
And
nominate.
if she is gonna miss the meeting and
In
you're gonna miss the
July.
meeting, couldn't we just cancel?
Yeah.
I mean, you
Yes.
could just
Oh.
cancel and
Yes.
postpone,
Okay.
yeah.
So there is a motion on the table
Nominate
to,
John Woomer to serve as vice chair until the election of officers takes place in April.
second.
moved by Jane, seconded by Bob Newell, all in favor? Aye.
She did
Congratulations,
Don't
John.
die on me,
All right, well, I'm most excited because I really thought it really came out of the secretary, so that works for now. Minutes continue. We have said, and just so everyone knows, and I've been very upfront with Laura, I mean, the hours that she spends, and it is not sustainable. And I can tell you, whoever comes in as liaison is not going to be able. However, because of the amount of work and the type of work we've been doing, it's been so critically valuable to have the documentation we do through this process, through the zoning, and then we're going to be on easy
The
streets.
density of discussion is amazing.
The density of
I wonder
dense
if
discussion.
there's a software package that can take a recording and.
There is.
There you go.
But it's still, no.
You still then have to edit that.
That's okay,
Because
that gets 90% of the work done.
I'll tell you, there's a lot of repetition.
Okay, that is a new business item C. Thank you for all your participation. That last is and then we're gonna get to some quick meeting reports. And it is 8:14. We have been asked to participate in a joint meeting. This has been a long time coming, and you saw Zach Hillier, I think that's how you pronounce that, on our meeting earlier on, introduced himself. We have been asked to join in a joint planning commission meeting with the township, centered around master planning and discussion on housing. Steve Patmore, there's been some contact between the two of us, and he is suggesting that the joint meeting would serve a few purpose, talking about master plan and discussing boundaries between the village and the township for compatibility, discussing goals and objectives that affect both jurisdictions and any other issues, discuss potential for efforts to work together more often, and lastly, Housing North to discuss discussion on housing. And so this has been asked of us, and so we are invited March 23rd. So this would be a joint planning. So again, this would be an additional meeting for us in March. It does not fall on our regular date.
Start at
Do we know the
6:30.
time?
I think they changed their
I
starting
think
time to
6:30. I will verify.
The township planning commission meets twice a month, and it's their regular second meeting.
So it's Thursday, the 23rd, and I do believe it is or did they go to 5:30? I will get that information to you. And unless anyone objects to us accepting this meeting, we'll put it on our calendars and.
Real quickly, do you think spring break is the week after that? I don't have my calendar.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
You said Thursday, March 23rd?
Thursday, March 23rd, and I will verify the time, either 5:36 or 6:30, I think. So I will be more.
Maybe someone in the public knows and they can tell us. Public eye.
But Ann would know.
I know.
I don't see
She
her
would
here.
know.
Okay, so that is that item. Thank you very much. Reports. Unfortunately, two of the meetings didn't, so we won't have a tree committee or infrastructure meeting. So we'll start with our zoning administrator report, Joni.
Oh, yeah, it starts at 27.
Okay.
You had my report, wasn't a ton going on. That's not to say that I don't get phone calls and questions and what can I do in this zoning and what can I not, but we definitely, as you see there, I sent a violation letter on some abandoned vehicles. We've had 2 complaints on Ransom Street, and for not only in our zoning, but the village has a junk ordinance that authorizes.
Inoperable vehicle ordinance? Or the junk one?
It is the junk, yeah. And so I did, and the term then goes to abandon once it's unlicensed. So, anyways, and an update on the 7th Street PUD. You'll see in my report next month that I did issue a land use permit. There was a new home going in on the North Shores Condominium Association there off of 7th Street.
Is that a previous association from decades ago?
It's the PUD that was created in between 6th and 7th Street.
Thunder.
Oh.
Is it
Thunder Road.
Thunder Road.
Yeah.
Oh.
That took some doing because, only because I had to go back and I dug out all the information on the meetings and the site plan because The builder did come to me with plans that didn't include a garage. And the, the site plan and the special use permit that the planning commission did and the work that they did at that time was very specific, not only that there was gonna be a garage, should be included, whether it be detached or attached, and specific in the type of building materials used. So check those boxes, and I'm gonna just keep my eye on it.
Are they gonna build it in the same style as the other ones? Then?
Yes, but this one should have wood siding.
Oh.
So.
Yeah, but I'm sure that would say.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
That's why she's keeping her eye on it. I asked in the council meeting if there was an update on Third and Rose or the hospital, and I just wondered, because you had said, oh, sure, as we talk about it, there will be one. I just wondered if there was any additional information or not.
Maybe this
So
tomorrow. Yeah. Whenever I mention something,
yes,
it happens.
Yes. I just want to be sure, because obviously the hospital, I feel like anything we can facilitate to help them move forward is the benefit of the village.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
anyway.
Yeah, I would imagine after the first of the year that people start moving.
And I do know the people that were
more so.
renting there have had to move out now. So I just know that that is progress. And so that's why I just want to know if it's progress that's continuing or they just booted everybody.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Got it.
In the kindest of terms, it wasn't a problem, but anyway.
Thank you, Joni. Jane, trustee report.
Yeah, I did do a written report. It was our annual reorganization meeting with newly elected trustee and president. And I mentioned earlier, we'll have a position to fill for the remaining 2 years on Chris McCann's term as trustee. And we did 2 letters of interest and are giving some additional time. That appointment should be made at the special meeting, December 21st.
Any questions for Jane? Oh, I'm sorry, did you still have something else you want to highlight?
No, I was just going to say if there's anything unclear or if there were any questions. I might point out, although there's hardly anyone left on the call, that through November, we had collected over $2,600 to the Christmas tree fund, but we will welcome donations, even though the tree lighting is over.
We've actually received donations,
Yeah.
so there'll be
I knew
another
there
report.
had been some last that
What's the total bill on that gonna be,
We're tallying it up as,
I mean, what
yeah.
has it been in the past? Is it like much higher than what they've collected?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah, it's probably closer to 8.
Wow.
And looking at it, it does look very pretty, blowing in the wind there. So.
Jane, what time is the special meeting on the 21st?
12:30?
It was
1
before the
o'clock.
meeting.
1 o'clock.
He he originally did say 12:30, but he bumped it. When I spoke to President McCain, he said maybe we should do it at 1 o'clock because he doesn't want people to have to come and then leave and come back. Because
It was scheduled to precede the infrastructure committee meeting. He doesn't care about the people on employee relations who have to come.
Come and go back and come and go back again.
So wait, real clear, the 21st, the infrastructure is still at 1:30 then?
For now.
And that is our new infrastructure chair.
oh. Sounds like the time's gonna change.
Okay, thank you. And as I said, the tree committee, and I reported when you were here last last month, has a lot of things ready to go for January, but took the month off. And infrastructure, because we moved our meeting up, it is next week, so I also have no new report on that. Time for public comment. For the people who sat here with us, thank you. And I just want to thank those of you that are here in person. We still have a few on the line there that we very much do appreciate the attention and consideration and things that we are learning from you. So go ahead, Greg.
Yes, thank you. Once again, Greg Nobles from 4th Street, and I would like to thank you for your conversation about 7th Street. But I do have a question and concern, frankly, about how this information from the Planning Commission gets communicated to the Village Council. I have enormous respect for the Village Council. I write them letters all the time. But I'm concerned that they've not been able to take part, at least most of them, in the very robust discussion that's going on, not just tonight, but previously. You alluded to 11 meetings about 7th Street, hundreds of pages of documents, and yet it's been dismissed as flounder. We'll have a new member of the village council coming soon, someone who's not been involved in these conversations whatsoever. And so I think that to take all this information, all the discussion that's been here, it has to be communicated in some more thorough fashion. It simply cannot be a matrix. It has to be more than a matrix. And I think it has to be, frankly, a public meeting, a public hearing involving the planning commission, the village council, and the dozens or so citizens, residents who have written about this. There's a great deal of public interest in the 7th Street issue. And I will say that I think there's still more information needed about this issue. Yeah, we've paid to have an appraisal, and that'll be coming sometime soon. But that'll give us simply a monetary value for this. We don't have an environmental impact statement about this. I think there are people who are capable of providing that, or at least assessing that. And so I would think with all the meetings that you now have coming up in the new year, I think a public hearing, a very widespread and well-advertised public hearing on 7th Street is an absolute necessity. Because I think this decision can't simply be passed on in a kind of a schematic fashion to the village council, some of whose members, I think, tend to be rather impatient and want to get this settled. Well, I think we all want to get it settled, but I think it takes a lot of conversation, a lot of discussion, and I think a little more back and forth than the council has been willing to invite so far. So that I put that as a recommendation that there be a public hearing on this issue involving as many public officials and members of the public as possible.
Thank you. Campbell.
Yeah, a couple of things. I think you all know this information much better than the council does. And this challenge of transmitting that information, distilling it down, providing them a basis for your decisions. And that, John's idea going there forward with a process, this is the process we're going to finish with, is a great idea. I always think you need to, I was in environmental business as a manager. We prepared feasibility studies for the EPA. These are closed air force bases in California. And much like what you're doing. So you do need, we call them alternatives rather than plans, which you have. So you have these plans and you can have subcategories under that. The criteria which you've established to push up against each one of those, using a numeric system and coming up with a winner or a loser, but they're ranked. You just know you have all four ranked, and the difference between the ranking could be 3 points, 4 points, or 10 points. I think you're obligated, or I feel I always want to provide added value. You just can't throw up, as John's saying, a matrix, just this is what it is. You have to have basis for each one of those decisions. And when it comes to cost, nobody's going to agree on the exact cost. It's high, medium, or low, or pick a couple of, it's just as general, you're going to have, and these are monetary values. So when you come to no action or leave it as, or enhance it or whatever, that still has value, for future generations. That's environmental value. But again, I think the real challenge is to take this, distill it down, and provide them with the information for the decision maker. They are the decision makers. But I feel you've been charged with assessing the data, collecting the data, assessing, distilling it, synthesizing, whatever words you want to use, and providing them with recommendations. You shouldn't shirk from that responsibility. You should embrace that. I mean, it's like an executive summary, what you're going to provide to them, and then behind it is all the breakdown of basis and the decision making to get where you were with the recommendations that you do give. And I feel you'd be shirking. Yeah, I just don't see why you'd back away from that. And Jane brought up the idea that the set lots that were created, the 4 ones, I think they could be reconfigured. Specifically if you want something, they have a canal in there, and it seems like the northeast end of the property, you have to do more than the minimal acceptable environmental, you have to do more than that. So you just lop off maybe reconfigure that lot so it's completely away from any wetlands at all. And go back and have somebody do a quality check on those surveys to see, it doesn't change much, but that's where people worry about a bias in the system. I mean, why did they get smaller? Why didn't they get bigger? Somebody could have grew those delineation sites much larger, but somebody got them in there real tight. So that's just, the public is always going to look at it that way because you've seen all the comments coming in, and I would imagine they probably favor no development. The public meeting is important to make sure that, we don't have another food fight like we had with the sewer system, where the REUs, 40 of them were created to get the thing passed, but that's a whole nother story. So anyway, I appreciate the work you're doing. I'm impressed with the dialogue. When I worked, I had to keep moving. And you guys dwell on it, work the words out, and feel comfortable, move on. So that's good. You're taking it very responsibly. So hats off. Thank you.
Oh, sure.
Hey, Mary, what have you got for us?
No, I appreciate all your work too. I think you finally came to 4 conclusions tonight. I'm not sure on the 3rd and the 4th one. I'm still real iffy where those ideas came from because I didn't see them in any letters that I read. What I am clear is I still like a simple, preserve the natural habitat. You keep adding words to that, and the verb preserve natural habitat, that's it. When you start adding little adjectives and this and that, personally, I would leave it as simple as possible. It says what it says. Number 2 I get is develop the 4 lots. Sell them off, do whatever you need to do. Then we get to 3 and 4, and maybe I've got them switched around, but 3 was like, sell off 2 lots, but keep the natural habitat. And the next one was, use the front for something in the village and not sell off the back lot. I got real confused with those last 2. I personally, I like your idea. Put someplace to acknowledge the people that have made suggestions. This is because somebody else may pick up on it. As a county library, that was a cool idea. Somebody else may chime in that didn't hear it. And I think it's important, as Laura said, is to put those. But those last 2 got real muddy to me. I think you could go with, and I know you're at the 4th one, but I think you could go with 3. 4 is way, I think, too many. You offer people 3 suggestions, usually not than even number 4. So that was my comment, because I sat here and listened to it, so I don't know, like you said, how it's going to be presented, because I'm sure they're going to sit there and go, we're going to sell off the front, then what are we going to do with the back? Who's going to own the back? Well, if we build 2 houses on the front, then we do nothing with the back, who's going to, that's where it gets real muddy to me. The first 2 are very clear, either develop it, or keep it the way it is. Clean up the front, plant some of your trees. You're the tree man. Let's have a tree planting party. Why not? That's the perfect excuse. We could all go down there and plant a tree in our name, on that front, have it cleaned up. So that's the only thing I can see coming out of the council, because I listened to the council meeting the other night too. And they're like, oh, what? Wait, what are we doing? So I think the more you muddy the situation, they're going to have more questions. So personally, I wish you could get it back to 3 and just say the other one was a suggestion, and it's too late now because you've already voted on it. But I just feel it's really, you're going to get a lot of questions with those 2.
Thank you, Mary. Jerry.
Yeah, once again, I will support everything that has been said by the commenters. One element that was left out of the discussion of any development was the preservation of public access to whatever natural areas might remain. So I urge you to consider that. And then I'll leave you with something entirely uncontroversial. In the last few weeks, there has arisen on the 7th Street site a monument of truck tires. Now, a dump is a non-conforming use. So I hope the city officials who are here tonight will take appropriate action to get that cleaned up. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas all.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thanks, Jerry.
Anyone else on Zoom want to comment? Hearing none, commissioner comments. Board comment, board member comments. Or Joni, please, you know.
I can just respond that those tires were moved there from the Leelanau Children's Center until they can be recycled.
Oh, thank you. I have been wondering and I've forgotten to Jerry. Thank you. That is good to know. Okay.
Tires are no longer allowed on playgrounds, and there was a plentiful amount.
Oh, that's why they're painted. Is that right? That's
Mhm.
interesting.
And
It didn't make sense.
Chris
until we
knows
could just dump them.
exactly how many are there, so if anyone tries to add.
Oh, I was
Oh,
saying,
good.
he would be upset that we took away, at the adding. Okay, thank you, that is a good piece of information. Board member comment.
Everyone looks at me.
I got one or two, but.
Yeah, I can go first.
Oh, no, go ahead, go.
No.
Jane.
I was just going to congratulate Vice Chair Wilbur. Thank you.
Don't die on me.
All right.
And just one comment, when we present the 4 options to the village council, if I differentiate between the two confusing by saying that the village would retain ownership of the natural area and develop the other parcel versus the village would retain ownership of the natural area but sell the other parcels, other lots to be developed by someone else. That's the distinction.
Okay, and I do think, piggybacking on that, I think when we see it in the minutes, you were watching sausage being made, and it was very, very good. I had the same confusion between, it really is 2 and 3. We jumped from 1 to 4 because those were the easiest. But I think once you see the minutes, I'm hoping we'll all be on the same page. Laura?
Yeah, let's hope. So I guess congratulations to John and thanks, and I'm happy to continue serving as secretary. And I can't remember the other thing I was gonna say, but maybe it'll come back to me before.
It'll be in the minutes.
Yeah. I never had it.
Congratulate John, but I also suggest that there's still time to put a letter in to be considered for a trustee position. So you need a trapdoor to back out.
Then that means you would have to be vice chair.
No, there's 2 of us.
I don't know, that's a trapdoor or a dungeon or whatever. We would support that, but please don't.
They have a trapdoor in the news.
Yikes, yikes. One thing I do want to ask the commissioners, if in the next few weeks, if you have, I asked you several months ago to keep track and think about any professional development that you've done over the course of the year. If you've done any seminars, webinars, I know many of you have. If you just give me an idea of the number of hours that you can, I am responsible for putting together an annual report, and I would like to document that because I know that not only are we doing all of this, but that many of us are putting in extra hours trying to learn this work a little more, and so I appreciate it and would like to get that documented. And again, would like to thank our public for joining us, and I hope that we can continue to answer questions, and I think reading the minutes will help some of this, and I appreciate it and appreciate everyone's work. Anyone else with board member comments? Anything else?
I have to congratulate John.
You have to buy you a beer.
Something. All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
I'll second it.
No, think about it.
Moved by Bob Newell, seconded by Kathy Wessel, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Who seconded it? I'm sorry.
Kathy.
Kathy, my pen stopped working, so then.
Illustrated.
You win the fence.
That's very.
Yeah, I know it is, usually like that's why.
Yeah.
So Akron last year, I had to change it for the first time ever because of all so all of the extensions too, I had to change that, so.
So you'll be in Anna Maria.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go to Philadelphia.
As you were going to do when presenting these four different projects, you want to put a little visual, a
And so
little
we
drawing.
found a
Yeah.
really nice
Yeah.
town. I
just don't think I
Yeah.
know.
We will be down there.
No, I think that's.
Okay, anyways, do the art museum,
Yeah.
park in the Penn.
I have to tell you.
And not.
Come back.
Research if you need to do it.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Throwing out our
Okay.
We were talking last week.
I wonder where it went. Oh my gosh. I was trying to play that back because I love her. I was like,
You don't look so.
Yeah, I went out.
Yeah, no, I was glad to do it. I
Yeah,
mean, it's
I
something.
know, I love it.
Oh, they're ready.
I just laughed so hard. Take it back.
That's a good idea.
Ours is with the.
Well, I can help if you need help with this. So-
I think
I know you've got the,
Yeah.
the survey.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I do.
And
On the
so
canal.
being
You can
able
bring
to
up
do
all
it.
day.
Yeah, because like for the temporary, like, I created that. Where it's-
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can't move far forward.
Is that scrap?
Yeah.
Last time.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
it's-
good.
Buy that. Yeah.
Campbell's on the west,
And,
the way
but
that-
we
Yeah.
should get it off.
Pictures.
And the house next
And then we have pictures.
The house next door.
But not the parts that didn't happen yet.
You don't even know. You
It'll be interesting because what I'm
Right
gathering
there,
is a lot of people watch and the water's
Very
very
nice.
Oh, yeah.
There are, you know, and so.
They're running out right now, right through my cement wall, my, you know, I have.
So close will be watching all the.
Guess where that's
Philip,
going?
Buckle around
We're
and
gonna
that.
I feel
We're
like
gonna
it's
be-
They've got it all.
Yeah.
right.
Just the boundary.
Yeah. Well, they chopped down a lot of trees. The roots and takes up all that water, so you can have a high water
For
table.
even that license.
Yeah.
That's fine.
That's what I was getting at, how we want to, but,
And
that's
so.
okay too.
We kind of.
So easy.
Yeah.
So long.
Oh, she did? No, it was very much, yes.
But
Oh my
I think
gosh.
there's no.
So many things, because we just kept sure who's gonna ask you what.
That they can't just.
Short, like 50, 60.
Right, right.
They would push it through.
Oh, yeah. I'm not excited about being in the water. Big fish jump next to you. So I'm like, oh.
That's what get the market for that.
I really.
Well, I'm for opening that up.
Yeah.
If you want long-term liability and maintenance costs, you want to reduce those.
Wait, he said, wait.
Speaking up.
But now I show up to his house to tell him, hi, I'm here. Let's do something.
We do.
You know, we're trying, I know we're not, and tell me the gentleman, because it's hard for me, I've looked at this and I think probably all of us, we've been very objective at the beginning when we know how different people are leaning more. We're looking at this thing resolved months ago, because to me, this is the most logical option.
Oh, yeah, yeah, we said the same thing, but I'm just not quite sure
On the other
where.
hand, I
Is it
just
like,
think that,
you know, wanna, well,
And that has been
we've
the
been there for,
Okay, and then
this will be our
dessert,
6th year.
she didn't really.
And that's 6 years,
It's
so you're talking about a lot longer.
Or
Just not 6 years. Right.
I took the girls.
It went from in January, so it went from January.
And
No,
that
to
didn't even.
February.
Yeah,
so
we
it's
did.
not-
But this is perfect,
And it,
because we had.
not so many people
Be a little
around.
personal and.
The last 2 years,
And-
last 2 years, like,
I've talked to Chris and I was talking about how this other
Somehow, but they had, I think,
Yeah.
Go to lunch.
Yes, I would agree. I'm
Right.
for that.
Agree
Uh,
that
and
maybe-
so frustrating. I
Yeah,
get
yeah.
comments at that meeting
Yeah.
about,
Something
you know, we're not doing this.
it
we're not doing
is,
this.
it is,
You know,
yeah.
if you're gonna join us and be here and give constructive feedback, which you have done each month, and, you know, and sometimes
It's
I
just
know
like
that.
long laid out there, but.
But you know what
Yes,
I'm talking
it is.
about.
Tomorrow at 6.
I know, but in that how long and
Yeah,
then for,
I
I see
see
no
like that, and I said,
we
we
do-
do
No,
layers.
we do roll things over and over and over and try to get to the consensus.
Yeah.
And it can be,
So anyway, my communication with Ken
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
you know, anything.
Or
And
just guaranteed it's
drop
gonna
off
be
an
more.
email.
Yeah.
He just
Yeah, I
said,
know, we're gonna see if we did get our flight,
my middle initial.
you know, right out of Traverse City, I checked
That's
that.
kind of.
But it's
Isn't
correct
that?
on
Yeah.
yeah, he's on
We were gonna
he's on the
sign
west
a
side.
Clearwater
Exactly. No, this doesn't impact everyone. It's really does.
Yeah, because we're gonna go over to Daytona.
It's a long-term thing.
Yeah.
What I
But-
did is, I felt like everything I sent.
Anyway,
you know,
thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate the feedback and
People
That's
dialogue.
Allegiant.
You know, we're gonna be,
Yeah.
They tell me
living in Philadelphia in winter.
Yeah, you could leave on a Thursday,
Really?
come back on
We
a
rented
Sunday.
out our house in Atlanta.
Yeah.
But he
I
had.
didn't know
Yeah.
that.
So last year-
Just
No, I just looked at, just
And
last
that is.
Okay.
I've done that before when I first started.
I bet you that's
So with-
Probably the second week of January.
Have you heard of
So
Turo?
there, and I'll be back probably.
Yeah, it's yeah, you just book, people rent like they do their own.
Okay,
cars.
Yeah, I really would.
Yeah.
It's like an Airbnb.
Yeah, so for $400 I could have like a,
Is essential.
I asked if for maybe.
No, but I would like them
Don't
to
remember.
look at the stuff first so they have an idea
And
what
they'll
they're talking
go
about.
over
It
it.
didn't make sense for me
Yeah,
at this
our
point,
side.
even though we talk about it,
So,
for us to run our
yeah,
own
you
little
gotta
public
check
hearing,
that out.
we
Whoever or
have
me.
we need them to
Turo.
hear.
I want
our public, and they need to hear the
And we've
explanations.
done it now twice with Turo, and been successful. Yeah, the people who are on the radar, you know, just like they, so you know what you're getting.
So anyway.
Yeah, you can buy
Anyway,
extra.
I'm,
Your insurance for your
Again,
car.
again, it's
And
not
cover
me,
you.
so really,
Yeah.
absence of faith,
Coverage, so, yeah.
Sharing with the roster.
public hearings.
Last year, for the first time, Katie and I did it.
Oh, see, I have no qualms for running public hearing. I think that's what needs to happen, but I think the audience that really needs to have this is the village.
Or any- Yeah.
Parties go
Yeah.
out.
And we went to the beach.
Yeah, that's right.
We had one in May.
Oh, so that's probably.
People who inhabit this building.
Well, no, that's.
I mean, I'm
For some. Yeah.
There may be
But,
some.
yes,
Oh,
right
of the
down
development
there,
of
so I know
the-
there is
Fred and, Coke.
You know, we came back.
Reminders.
No, those are the only two, people, not me.
Like, 2 days of like, are you kidding me? Yeah. There's a
Oh, I
lot.
don't think, I don't
Okay,
think so.
all right.
Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
sharing
I'm having a
AJ
separate
Oh.
basket,
Yeah.
put it in my
Yeah,
drinks
which-
and all the
That's,
chat.
that's awesome.
How you doing, Laura?
That's a lot.
He's
though.
ready to
Yeah,
go
we
to
should
the.
I said, if we do
Thanks.
something,
Next time.
That would
work.
So I'll just put it, you know,
Somebody that,
plus.
you know, they're 10 and
$150
10 and
checks.
11, but
Sure.
still a lot.
Oh,
A lot of energy there.
Unless you
Yeah.
put it separate
Yeah.
so that you've got some kind
You
of.
know.
Yeah, oh,
Record.
Oh, yeah. Well, our
Thanks,
our oldest
Laura.
granddaughter.
It's
she's
okay.
90 drive.
Just
So
maybe
that'll
too
be-
bad.
Yeah.
I gotta explain it.
Yeah.
She's got her.
You know, it's.
Yeah.
it's-
I don't- look at, I put, oh,
Alright,
here
so
I
I-
am.
I'm going down and
be able to
calling
put it at this level.
Chrissy tomorrow with, yeah, the final.
Final.
And she is so flexible, she's not charging people that don't show up. And most places do charge.
Yeah.
Little Trudy.
Except, did you
Yeah.
see her, did you see her
We have a
post
stocking that she fits
on
in.
Facebook?
That's about it.
So,
Did you see that
well, 'cause
post?
like my,
Who's post?
Christie's about people stealing?
Yes,
Yeah.
from Fishers, from
Yes, because
Oh,
we're having
really?
we're having our Lions Club there.
Don't steal
And I
anything.
yesterday texted her and said, if you guys, she said, we need the dishes, we need the silverware, we need they're stealing the
As mementos, I
special
mean,
sauce,
as mementos.
something off the wall. But she said, we're still trying to, I said, I actually said, if you guys are freaking out, you can cancel it. The Lions Club can live without their holiday dinner. But she said, no, we're doing this. And
No, just tell the Lions to keep this stuff on the table.
But the Lions, yeah, well.
No one on a Lions.
No, but what I thought was amazing about her is that she did say that, she said, you're all getting stuff that we normally serve, so because typically, and I've gotten stuck with this before, if people don't show up, you still have to pay. And
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
then it's been,
Are you ordering off the menu or?
no,
It's a set menu.
we all had choices.
Oh,
So,
okay.
but it's
Like
the
4
typical,
options,
it's the
yeah.
roasted chicken, it's
Oh.
perch, and it's pork. And
Okay.
but she said if people, because I've already had 4 people, 2 COVIDs,
Oh.
and then 2 missed something they had to do, so. But then I didn't have Jane Gale on because she would have got emails. Hey, recording secretary.
That is so
So,
awesome.
yeah.
Isn't that? And you.
Oh, I was gonna say, my nephew, he was born right before Christmas. And so they made a special stocking for a photo shoot and put him by all the other stockings on Christmas. It was really cute. So if you have one that's big enough, it's, and now, I mean, like, it's one of their favorite photos from his newborn photos because they had all the presents and the Santa plate next to him and all the stuff, and he's in a special stocking that my sister made that he put in.
That's
So-
really cute, yeah. So anyway. That was,
I
there you
was
go.
just gonna tell
I'll be back
Kathy,
tomorrow at
found
some
on
point.
the,
Does that work?
Christie's
Is there
post
meetings tomorrow?
When
I don't know.
our family first heard.
Normally it kicks people out even if you're still
The
there.
first thing Maria and
I
my son
guess,
was, she knows the balloon